Hi everybody, I'm Dan from English Exam World and welcome to this B2 First practice video. In today's video, we're going to take a full-length B2 First practice test, which includes all parts of the reading and use of English, writing, listening, and speaking papers. So whether your exam is in 2 months, 2 weeks, 2 days, or even tomorrow, don't worry. As we go through the test, I'll share with you some tips, strategies, and ideas to help you feel more confident and better prepared for the exam. Remember that this practice test can be downloaded for free. You can either watch the video and complete the questions with me, or complete the practice test first and come back to this video to check your answers. The practice test can be downloaded via the link in the description below. This is going to be quite a long video, so get comfortable and let's get started. Okay, so we'll start with the reading and use of English paper. Now, in the B2 First exam, there are 7 parts and you're given 75 minutes to complete it. Remember that you can start with any part of the 7. In this video, I will go through them in order, so part 1, part 2, part 3, and so on. Okay, so we start with reading and use of English part 1. Now, in this part of the test, you're given a text of about 150 to 160 words, and there are 8 gaps. For each gap, you're given a list of 4 possible options, and you must decide which option best fits the gap. Now, one way that I like to approach this task is to see if I can think of the word or a correct word before I look at the options. So the reason I do that is because that gets you to think about the type of word that you need, also the context and the meaning of the sentence or sentences. And because the options typically have similar meanings, they're very closely connected, sometimes when you look at them, it can be a bit confusing. So try that first, then have a look at the options, and let's see how we get on. Okay, so we'll go through this together. A digital footprint is the record of information that people behind. Yeah, so immediately the word leave jumps out, because leave behind means when you, for example, have an object, you leave it there. In this case, information's a good one. So you leave information and you go somewhere else. Let's see. Brilliant. It's there. Perfect. So let's have a look at the other options. Stay, remain, leave, and fall. Okay, so yeah, not remain behind or stay behind, and not fall behind. Fall behind basically means to be in a sort of lower position or further back than someone else. So the correct answer is leave. Okay, we'll keep going. Every time someone visits a website, posts on social media, watches a video, sends a message, or buys something online, they generate small pieces of data. Some of this information is, and then the word given jumped out there. Some of this information is given by the user themselves, such as photos, comments, and profile details. Yep, given looks like it might work. Let's have a look. Given is not there, so we need to find a word that has a similar meaning. Some of this information is offered by the user themselves. No. Suggested. No, you don't. You provide information. So the correct collocation, provided by the user themselves, such as photos, comments, and profile details. Other information is collected automatically, such as location data, search history, and the variety, genre, type, category. Variety of device, not variety, not category. Genre is more used with films or books. When you talk about a comedy or a thriller or science fiction, those are genres. So it's not really used with devices. So the correct answer is type there. Okay, a digital footprint can be useful because it helps websites remember preferences and therefore show more. Oh, so let's see which we've got. Relevant, accurate, significant, essential. Okay, so the correct answer is relevant content. So because it says here, helps websites remember preferences and therefore shows you what you like, not what you dislike, so that content is relevant to you. So relevant content is the correct answer. However, it can also create risks. Employers, universities, or strangers may come from old posts. Oh, sorry, I said from immediately. That's interesting. It might be an option. Come from, but it doesn't really work. Come from old posts and companies. Yeah, so not from. This might be a phrasal verb. Yes. Okay, so they've given us 4 prepositions here. Across, around, off, from. Okay, all of these work with come. So come across, come around, come off, and come from. What it's actually looking for, or the meaning of this sentence, is to find. So employers, universities, or strangers may find old posts and companies. Now, the one that works or has a similar meaning to find is come across. So strangers may come across old posts. So across is the correct answer. For this, yes, I think this is going to be reason. For this reason. We'll come back to it though. For this reason, people should think carefully before sharing information online. Yes, it's there. Excellent. Now, this one is a set phrase when you say for this reason. Let's just check the other options though. For this cause, no. For this meaning, and for this result, no. So these don't work. They're all words. They all have a very similar meaning, but because we're looking for the set phrase, for this reason is the correct answer. So reason is true. Carefully before sharing information online. They should check privacy settings, using weak passwords, and delete accounts. Okay, so this means, I think this is getting it, don't use weak passwords. So they should check privacy settings, not use weak passwords, and delete accounts. But because we've got the word using here, that tells me we're going to see a verb plus ing, like prevent or agree or something like that. I don't think it might be those two. Oh, prevent is there. Okay, so yeah, okay, so we've got 4 very similar options. Deny using, all grammatically fit with using. So we want one that means don't use weak passwords. And the word that we have there is avoid using. It's not ignore, it's not prevent or deny. I mean, prevent, for example, it might work if the sentence said, companies need to prevent users or need to prevent customers from using weak passwords. Maybe that might work. But because of the way the sentence is structured, avoid is the correct answer. Okay, that's the end of part 1. Let's jump over to part 2. Now, in Reading and Use of English part 2, you're given a text again of about 150 words. There are 8 gaps, but this time you need to write one word that you think best fits each gap or works in each gap. You're not given any words to choose from. You need to write in one word that you think fits. Okay, let's make a start and we'll discuss how we can approach this as we go through. For Sarah, a professional photographer, no 2 days are ever the same. Oh, no 2 days are ever the same is the correct answer. Again, this is a set phrase we use in English when you talk, particularly when you talk about your own job. In my job, no 2 days are ever the same, which means it's a lot of variety within that job. Her career is a new blend of technical, artistic vision, unpredictable. 1 week she might be shooting a high school passion in Paris, and next capturing week. Okay. The is the correct answer here. This actually, you need to read the whole sentence here because it says 1 week she might be shooting a high profile. So 1 week doing something, the next week doing something else. Or sometimes in English, as it is here, 1 week doing something, the next doing something else. So the is the correct answer. And you can use it with 1 week, 1 day. 1 day I might be doing this, the other I'm doing something else. So the okay, a photographer's life extends far. Simply pressing a button. Okay, so this means that she doesn't just press a button. There's more, lots more to her job. Extends far. Okay, the correct answer is far beyond. So to extend beyond something, meaning more than just something. Okay, Sarah, hours, scouting perfect locations, adjusting complex lighting setups, and putting nervous subjects. Okay, we've got 2 in this one sentence. This one we need a verb, and I think, in fact, I know the answer is spends. So spend time doing something, typically again used in jobs. I spend time researching, or in this case, I spend hours scouting perfect locations, adjusting complex, and putting nervous subjects at ease. Again, this is another fixed phrase to put someone at ease, to make someone feel at ease. I want you to remember the phrase at ease. The reason being is you might see it in part 2, but also you might see it in part 3. And I'll explain why when I get to part 3, because the word ease, coming from easy, is an interesting form. And we'll come back to that because we might see, and I hope we do, we may see ease, I don't know, but we might see a word that's like that. So we'll come back to it. Anyway, let's go on. Additionally, a significant portion of her time is dedicated to digital editing. Yeah, careful refining. Okay. While the freedom of freelance work is exciting, it requires immense self-discipline, managing clients, marketing her portfolio, and investing in. So to invest in something is the correct preposition there. Expensive gear can be stressful. Nevertheless, capturing a fleeting, powerful human emotion. Ooh. Nevertheless, capturing a fleeting, powerful human emotion, the challenge is worthwhile. Okay, it's a verb. Oh, this is a tough one. Well done if you've got this one. You might be screaming at me. It's going to think about this one. Makes the challenges worthwhile. Yes, that's it. Nevertheless, capturing a fleeting, powerful human emotion makes the challenges worthwhile. So to make something worthwhile, it's a nice collocation that is used there, meaning that it's it's really valuable, or it's a good thing we did it, or it makes it worth us doing it. For Sarah Photography, okay, there we go. That is the end of part 2. We'll jump on to part 3. How are we doing for time? Just over an hour. Okay, good. So, reading and use of English part 3. Again, another similar length text to part 1 and part 2. Again, 8 gaps. This time, you are given a word in brackets, which is often called the base form of the word. And that word you must transform or change either into a noun form, adverb, adjective, something like that, to best fit the sentence based on what's written around it. So if you're taking the paper-based test, you might see these base words, or you will see these base words at the end of each sentence. So they will come here, and there's normally only one per sentence. This format, we've got the base word after the gap, but you might also see them here. But in any case, this is the word we need to transform for gap 17, this word for gap 18, and so on. Okay, so again, the good thing is, or the best way to do this is to think, what type of word do you need? Because that's going to help you with the transformation. Is it a noun, adverb, adjective, for example? So let's start by doing that. The onion is a fundamental vegetable belonging to the Allium genus, and it is, okay, so adverb is needed here. The adverb of close is closely. So closely is correct. It is closely related to garlic leeks and chives. Yeah. Cultivated globally for for thousands of years. It shows underground bulb. Onions typically consist of multiple layers of tissue. They break outer skin, and they are available in several distinct, including yellow, red, and white. Okay. Now, very is a good it's a good option. Vary is quite common because there's a couple of ways you can transform this. So you might be thinking variation, or you might be thinking variety. One of these is correct. Well, almost correct. One of these. So variation, when we use it in English, it means a change in something. So you say a variation in size or a variation in color. Variety is used more to talk about the type of something. Now, the type is sort of what we're looking for here, because we're talking about types of onion. We've got it here, yellow, red, and white. So variety is the form, but it's not quite correct yet, because you might have worked out already that this is more than one we're talking about. So they're available in several distinct, including yellow, red, and white. So we need the plural form here, and the plural form is varieties. Drop the Y, add IES. Okay, from a nutrition, so it's the adjective, nutritious, nope, it's not nutritious, it is nutritional. So adding AL to the end of nutrition. Perspective, onions have numerous health benefits. They're notably low in calories while being rich in essential vitamins, particularly vitamin C and vitamin B6. In addition, so basically they contain, yeah, that's right. So in addition, because we're giving extra information after, we've got the word in, we've got the word add. So a word that means also, because we're giving extra information, is in addition. So addition is the correct answer. Okay, today China and India are the leading of onions. Okay, produce again is another interesting one because there are a couple of options again. And again, you might be thinking of putting something at the start of the word, reproduction, for example. But it's one of these two. Now, because we're talking about the people, or in this case, we're talking about the countries, the correct option is producer. But again, always check your gaps and make sure, is it singular or plural? That's one of the questions to always ask yourself. China and India, 2 countries, therefore producers is the correct answer. Many local farming communities take great in cultivating unique regional variety. Okay, so yes, I'm glad this one has come up. Okay, so the answer is pride. Take great pride in something. Now, the reason I wanted to bring this up, and this relates back to, remember in part 2 when I said, let's think about the word ease and at ease. Sometimes the change, if you look at the changes that we've made so far, closely, varieties, nutritional, we're adding, or we're transforming the word by adding a suffix, or we're changing the end of the word. So in part 3, you might change the beginning, you might change the end. At least once, you'll be asked to change both. We haven't seen one yet, but we might do. Or you'll do what's called an internal change. Now, take great pride in is a good example of that, because you're not adding something to the end. You're not making it proud and then saying proudness or proudable. By the way, those aren't words, but just to give you the example, you're actually transforming, you're changing internally. So proud becomes pride. Ease is another one you might see. So think, if you see easy, it might not be because you've got easily, but it might be a possibility that at or ease rather is the answer. So for example, in this one, if this was a part 3, it would say putting nervous subjects at, then you would have a gap, easy in brackets, and the answer would be ease. So there's quite a few of these to think about. I'll bring them up on the screen now. So long to length, deep to depth, high to height. These are all examples, proud to pride, all examples, and a few others there are, of internal changes. So just remember those as you go through. One of them might be a more internal change. Okay, next up, like certain crops that only thrive in specific climates, onions can be grown almost anywhere. Okay, so what we've got here, like is another really interesting one because there's so many transformations this can take. You can have unlike, alike, dislike, likelihood, likely, likeliness, so many basically. So what do we need here? Because it's at the start of the word, that tells me it's going to be it's a contrast here. So look, we've got certain crops that only thrive in specific climates on the one hand. On the other hand, or the contrast, onions can be grown almost anywhere. So some crops don't grow, onions grow everywhere. So we need to introduce a contrast, and the word that we need to do that is unlike. So unlike certain crops that only thrive in specific climates, onions can be grown almost anywhere. Perfect. Onions are one of the most versatile ingredients in the kitchen. Onions, well, first of all, Well done if you got this one. This is hard. And this is actually, here it is. The example when I said that you, in at least one of the words, there won't be many, it's at least one, mostly one, but it could be two, that you'll need to change the beginning and you'll need to change the end of the word at the same time within the same base form. So the answer here, well done if you said undoubtedly. So onions are undoubtedly one of the most versatile ingredients in the kitchen. Now, undoubtedly means like without doubt or certainly. But notice how we've changed. So our base form is doubt. So we've got the base form in there as well. So we haven't actually had to change the word doubt, but we have had to add a prefix un and also change the end with edly to create undoubtedly one of the most versatile. Well done if you said that. That completes part 3. Let's head on over to part 4. Okay, so this part 4 of reading and use of English is, in my opinion, one of the hardest part in the entire B2 First exam. It is really difficult, but let's go through each one and I'll show you how I might approach this, and hopefully this helps you as you tackle this. Now, very quickly, because we've got 55 minutes remaining and we've got the other 3 parts to go, including this one. Okay, so let's start with this first technique. What do we need to do here? We need to complete the second sentence so that it has a similar meaning to the first sentence. Now, in each question, we're given a word. We must use that word and we mustn't change its form. So we mustn't, for example, add an S to let's. It would never be let's, always let is used in this example. We must also write between 2 and 5 words. So that means 2 words, 3 words, 4 words, or 5 words. If we write 6, 7, or 8, it's wrong. Okay. Now, one technique I like to use here is to see in the second sentence what's repeated from the first sentence. So for example, we have in the first one, Michelle and Martin, Michelle and Martin. So we don't need to worry about Michelle and Martin or transforming that bit in the second sentence. Also, we've got until 11 p.m. at weekends, and we've got that here as well, until 11 p.m. at weekends. So again, we don't need to worry about that bit. So it's actually this here that we need to think about changing or transforming or doing something with. Now, notice in the second sentence, we have the word up. That tells me that we need a phrasal verb here. So we need a phrasal verb that has a similar meaning to don't go to bed, or their children don't go to bed. So that the word that we can think of is stay up. So that's going to be our final word, I think. I'm pretty sure with this one. So Michelle and Martin, we need a verb. So let comes in. So we've done don't go to bed. That's stay up. We've got let in. So we just need this bit here. Now, with the plural S, Michelle and Martin lets children doesn't make sense. So the possessive here is interesting, and how we transform that. It would become let their children. So the correct answer, Michelle and Martin let their children stay up until 11 p.m. at weekends. That has a similar meaning to the first sentence. That has 4 words, so we're within the word, and we didn't change the form of let, so we're all good. That's the correct answer. Well done if you said that. Okay, next up, we only have, again, look at the repeats. We only have 1 day left of our holiday, so we need to enjoy. Again, it's repeated. So the bits that we need to think about here is this bit, but it changes a little bit, the time we have left. Okay, most. Enjoy every last minute. Yes, correct answer. Make the most of. Make the most of the time we have left. Make the most of has a very similar meaning to enjoy something, to enjoy everything about it. That's what that means in the first sentence. That's the same meaning, or similar meaning at least, in the second. So make the most of. Everyone says that Oliver is quitting the band after their tour finishes. Oliver quitting the band. Oliver said he... No, okay. Ah, got it. Right, yes. If you, like me, originally thought said he was, but that doesn't have the same meaning as the first sentence. So it's not Oliver in the first sentence. It's not Oliver saying he is quitting the band. It's everyone else. Other people are saying it. So what we need to do here is do this. Oliver is said. Now, that brings in the passive, but we've got the quitting here. Is said quitting? No, we need more. So what we need after is said is to be. So Oliver is said to be quitting the band after their tour finishes. That's the correct answer. Okay, number 28. The low salary is why Ian didn't accept the role. Okay, we've got the verb down. Again, low salary, low salary. Why suggests a reason. Okay, yeah. So why suggests a reason here. And because we've been given the word of, that tells me that it's going to be something because of. So because is going to be needed because of the low salary. Now down also suggests a phrasal verb. So we need a phrasal verb that means the same as didn't accept. In this case, I'm going to go for turn down. Now we need to turn down something. So we've got that. So we've got didn't accept, turn down, is why, or is why. We've got because. So what did they turn down? The role. So turn down the role. That's not all. Didn't accept. So it's in the past. So we need to transform turn to the past. So turned down the role because of the low salary. Correct. Yes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Brilliant. Within 5 words, that's the correct answer. Okay, next up. I first visited Madrid 20 years ago. Oh, gosh. Okay. This one tests your grammar knowledge. Okay, so let's think about this then. Grammatical structure. I first visited Madrid 20 years ago, past simple. However, with since, we know we use the present perfect. So it has been, that's the present perfect form. Now, 20 years ago is the past simple, so we can't use a go with the present perfect. So what we need to do is just say 20 years. So it has been 20 years since. So we've transformed and we've worked out all this bit here. Now, what happens next? First visit to Madrid. Yeah. So notice how it's not visited in the second sentence, it's visit. So they're not using the verb, they're using the noun. So we can't use I because there's no verb after it. So actually we use my. So it has been 20 years since my first visit to Madrid. That's the correct answer. Okay, last one. David likes all fruits apart from pears. Fruit, all fruits apart. Eh? Oh gosh, this is hard. Honestly, I've showed this to native speakers, this task type, part 4, and even they have real difficulties with this. So please don't worry if you find this challenging. David likes all fruits apart from pears. Right. So all fruits. I think what this is doing is it's a similar meaning, but we're using the opposite. So David likes all fruits, every fruit apart from pears. So all fruits, yes. Pears, no. What we're going to say is pears, no. All fruits, yes. That makes sense. So the only fruit, we need a subject, David doesn't like is pears. The only fruit that fits grammatically, it means the same. Let's count the words. 1, 2, 3. Okay, it's 6. So remember, in part 4, contractions, so words like doesn't, mustn't, shouldn't, couldn't, for example, haven't, these all count as 2 words. So technically, this is 6 words. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now remember that we have to write between 2 and 5 words, so that isn't true. So, but I like the start of it. I think we just need another form of the verb likes. The only fruit David dislikes. Yes, dislikes works. It's a good form of the verb like. Remember back to part 3, we saw like, and I think dislike was one of the options we thought about. So the only fruit David dislikes is pears. Perfect. Yes, that's the correct answer. There we have it. We've done part 4. Excellent. How are we doing for time? 45 minutes remaining. Let's jump ahead to part 5. We've got 3. And the first in part 5 of our long reading texts. Now, in part 5, you're given a long reading text and 6 questions. Each question has 4 possible options to choose from, A, B, C, or D. Your job is to choose the correct option according to what's written in the text. Now, if you don't have much time, you might be tempted just to quickly read as fast as you can through the text. Now, that's fine, and some people do that and are good with that, which is fine. But what I like to do here is I actually like to use the questions to help me find where the relevant information is. Now, what do I mean by that? Let's not read the text first. Let's look at the questions, or rather the actual questions, not the options at this point, just the question bit. Perfect. You can see in question 31, which is the first question in this set, that it actually tells us which paragraph to look in. So we've got here to a reaction to Elizabeth's resignation in the first paragraph. So we know 31 is somewhere in this bit here. Now we can go through and just take a look. Number 2, how did Elizabeth feel when she first saw? Okay, it doesn't do that, but it does it here. Yeah, 33. So question 33, which is the third one in our question set, tells us to look in the third paragraph. So this is the third paragraph. So somewhere in here is the answer. And because we know that the order of the questions follows the order of the text, we know that question 2, or number 32 here, is in the second paragraph. So we don't need to read through the whole text to find the questions. We just need to use the question, help us find where we need to look, and then read the relevant parts of it. So let's go for that. Let's do it that way. Okay, what do we learn about Mr. Henderson's reaction to Elizabeth's resignation? So we need to look for Mr. Henderson. Where is he? We can just quickly scan through. There he is. Perfect. Mr. Henderson. Okay, so let's remember in part 5, you can highlight as well. It's really useful, as we'll see here. So this looks to be the relevant bit. So what do we want to find out? What do we learn about Mr. Henderson's reaction to Elizabeth's resignation? So, okay, feelings here. He was annoyed. He appeared to have expected that she would quit her job. He tried to discourage her from moving to a remote location. So discourage means don't encourage, basically saying don't do that. He seemed jealous that she had found the courage to leave. Okay, so let's read it. When she finally had her resignation, the manager, Mr. Henderson, did not look surprised. He simply sighed, a sound that carried the weight of someone who had long ago forgotten his own ambitions. Okay, so he's not annoyed in this. He simply sighed. Says he doesn't look surprised. That's going to be key, actually, because I think I know what the answer is. I think the answer is B, but let's go through it. So he's not annoyed. Does he try to discourage her? You're searching for something that isn't on a map. So he's not saying don't do it. He's just more warning her, really. He's not discouraging her. He's not saying don't do this or don't quit your job or don't. So it's not C, because he's not discouraging. Does he seem jealous? He simply sighed and carry away with someone who had long ago forgotten his own ambitions. He's not really jealous. He's not. There's no suggestion of jealousy really here, and certainly not explicitly stated at all. So the reason I think it's B is this bit. He did not look surprised. Now, he appeared to have expected that she would quit her job. So when she handed in her resignation, her manager didn't look surprised. That is the same as saying he appears to have expected it. If you're not surprised by something, you expect it to happen or you think it's coming. So that is our answer. So 31 is B. Okay, let's move on to paragraph 2, and we know where to look for question 2. It's in paragraph 2. How did Elizabeth feel when she saw her? Okay, so feelings are common questions in part 5. Look at the adjectives carefully. Disappointed, worried, determined, surprised. So let's have a look for those. 2 weeks later, it was a new cottage. The roof sagged slightly, like a tired shoulder. She imagined herself writing. Okay, this looks like it might be key. Self-writing a novel, but the reality involved a chimney that smoked. Okay, yet she looked out in the wild Atlantic, shimmering in the morning sun. She felt a strange sense of defiance. She had not come here for comfort. She had come to find a vision. Okay, so is she disappointed? Well, what is she disappointed? That she had been misled by the estate agent? No. Although the look far more fragile, so she said, so it's different from what the estate agent's brochure said. She doesn't suggest disappointment. She's not saying I don't like it or, I feel let down. So it's not A. Worried that the cottage was too old to be lived in comfortably. Now, it talks about the cottage, tired shoulder, garden was filled with brambles and weeds. It does say she imagined herself seep into her bones. She doesn't suggest worried here. She talks about, dampness that goes into her bones, but there's no suggestion of being worried. Yet, as she looked out over morning sun, she felt a strange sense of defiance. This is the key, I think, because I think it's C. So let's just take away those. So, by the property, despite the property's poor condition. Okay, so when you have a strong sense of defiance, you are determined to do something. And this is also supported later in the sentence or in the paragraph. So she had not come here for comfort. She had come here to find a version of herself that was not defined by her job title or monthly salary. So yes, she is determined. She's not here for this reason. She's got her own sort of reason for doing it. And she has a strange sense of defiance. Defiance means you're determined to do something. I think it's C. Let's rule out D though. Surprised by the beauty of the surrounding landscape. Yeah, so they talk about the surrounding landscape, the Atlantic Ocean shimmering in the morning sun, but she's not surprised by it. So yeah, we're going to go for C. C is the correct answer. Okay, 33, we know to look in paragraph 3. It tells us here. So let's have a look. What does the writer suggest about Elizabeth's encounter with Mrs. Bennigan? Yeah, there is Mrs. Bennigan. Okay, so what does she suggest? The villagers were less welcoming than she had anticipated. Her view of the country life was not shared by the people living there. She needs to improve her practical skills to survive in the village. She should have chosen a more interesting. Okay, let's quickly read through and see if we can figure this one out. Looking at a woman, his face was. She asked it. Okay, that might be. She felt her face turning red. She had. Just highlight this. Spilling seemed more interested in whether. Okay. It was a sharp reminder that while Elizabeth was on a spiritual journey, the people were simply. Right. Okay. So, are the villagers less welcoming? No. Well, and certainly not than she anticipated. When you see this, than she had anticipated, it means she was expecting something else happened. Now, she does say she had expected the villagers to be a source of stories and wisdom. So she did think that they would be like something, but would it be that they would be less welcoming? No, there's no suggestion here that they're not less welcoming. She just thinks that they would have stories. So it's not A. Her view of country life was not shared by people living there. I think it's B, and I'll explain why in a bit. She needed to improve her practical. Yeah, again, so there's talk of, it says here, Mrs. So let's remove all these. Here we go. Seemed more interesting whether Elizabeth knew how to fix a leaking pipe or if she had enough firewood for the winter. So it's not that she needs to improve her practical skills. We don't know anything about her practical skills. The woman here is saying it's sort of is interested in it, but there's nothing here to suggest or say that she needs to improve her practical skills. And whilst she makes a joke, this is here, writing the great British novel, are we? She should have chosen a more interesting subject for her book. That is not what's being suggested. It's sort of saying, oh, you're writing another book or it's another book or something like that. It's not saying that it's not as interesting or anything like that. But if you look here, she does say that her view of country life is not shared. So Elizabeth was on a spiritual journey that people here simply living their lives. So there's a difference. And her romantic notions of rural life, so, she has a vision or an idea of what it's like, is not shared by the others. It says here, life were hers alone. So only hers. So her view of country life was not shared by the people living there, is the correct answer for 33. Okay, let's see for navigation purposes. Excellent. So 35, we've skipped 34 just to come to 35 quickly. And there it is. Yeah, lovely. So this is going to be a reference question. We'll come to this. But the reason I'm doing this is just to make sure that 34, the next question, is the next paragraph. And it is, because we know these two match. So therefore, follow that order. These two match as well. Okay, so Elizabeth struggled to write during her first few months at the cottage because she was too distracted by the housework that needed doing. She missed the structure and routine of her old office life. She found the silence of the countryside too overwhelming to work. She had used her career to avoid dealing with her own thoughts. Okay, so weeks turned into months. She found herself cleaning. Okay, so she's cleaning. Anything to avoid the terrifying blankness of her own mind. She realized that okay. That's an interesting phrase. She was forced to face the uncomfortable truth. She was not sure. The freedom she had worked so hard to gain, now vast empty room. Okay, so she's not able to write. So the first one, distracted by the housework that needed doing. Elizabeth would sit. So yes, she did the housework, but it wasn't the reason she was doing it, if that makes sense. It's not that she was doing the housework because she had a load of dishes there. She did it to take herself away from the blankness of her own mind. So it wasn't the housework was the result, not the reason, if that makes sense. So it's not A, I think. I'll just double check it, but I don't think it's A. She missed the structure and routine of her old office life. She doesn't mention anything about structure and routine, or missing the structure and routine. She doesn't seem to say anything about that. Yeah, so I don't think it's B. C. She found the silence of the countryside too overwhelming to work. Where does she mention the silence? Okay, so she doesn't actually mention anything about the silence of the word of the countryside. She talks about maybe the silence within her own mind, but that's not the countryside. So I don't think it's D. The other thing I've just realized I wanted to raise as well. You might have seen this and you might have done this. You see the word distraction and you see the word distracted. This is really common in the exam. Basically, the strategy is don't just choose an option because you see the same word in the text. Really, really important. We see the word distraction. You might think, oh, hey, it's got to be A. We know it's not that. We've already understood why it's not that. But it does use the word distraction. So it might be sometimes that they use the same word, but don't pick an answer because of that, because you see the same word. More often than not, it's going to be wrong. Okay, so what do we leaves us with D, which I think is the correct answer, because she says here, her constant busyness was a shield, which means she sort of used her career for something, but dealing with her own thoughts, there it is, the terrifying blankness of my own mind. And then, yeah, the rest of this confirms it. So without the distraction of emails, so without the career and the work that she was doing, she doesn't have anything to say or meaningful to say, and that sort of blankness in her mind. So D is the correct answer. 32 minutes. Oh gosh, we'll keep going through. Again, comments below if you want to find out why an answer isn't correct. I'll answer those. But let's go on to 35. So 35 is a classic reference question, very common in part 5. These are where you're asked to think, what does this mean, or what does this refer to? It might be like it, they, their, in this case, belong to her, we've got here. So what does the writer suggest by saying the words belong to her? So we need to read the whole thing and figure out, what does this mean, basically, or what is being suggested by this? Elizabeth had finally found an authentic way to express herself. Elizabeth was no longer worried about what her manager would think. Elizabeth had decided to write a diary instead of a fictional novel. Elizabeth felt that she had mastered the technical side of writing. Okay, let's go for it. Okay, so all of a sudden, she knows what to write. She reached for a notebook, began to write. She wrote about the fear of failing and the courage it took to remain calm. Okay. Distinct It was the first time, okay, when every instinct, it was the first time the words felt like they belonged to her. Okay, correct answer A. Had finally found an authentic way to express herself. So at the beginning, she didn't know what to say, right? We saw that in the last paragraph. And now all of a sudden, she's found the words. And she felt a sudden sharp clarity. And it says here, she wrote feeling of failing and remaining calm. So it was the first time the words felt like they belonged to her. So there's a sense of realness here. She's writing about something she knows, not something else that something else might know, things that she has felt. So, by the way the salt or air felt on her skin, the weeds in the garden, for example. So these are real things or authentic things. So A is the correct answer. I don't really need to look at anything else because there's no mention of writing a diary as such. No longer worried that a manager would think. Elizabeth was no longer worried about what a manager would think. Nope, there's no mention of the manager. Elizabeth felt she finally mastered the technical side of writing. No, it's not about the writing. It's not about how to write. It's about what she's writing. So yeah, A is the correct answer there. Okay, 36. What point does Elizabeth make about happiness? Okay, so she talks about happiness. It's only possible to be happy when you have no financial worries. It requires a complete break from one's past life. It comes from consistent with your beliefs. It's a temporary state, often followed by difficult times. Okay, so happiness. So she mentions happiness there. So let's see if that part gives us the answer. Happiness, she discovered, was not a destination at the end of a long journey, nor was it the absence of hardship. It was the quiet satisfaction of aligning her daily actions with her inner values. Inner values. So any suggest inner value? I think this one. So let's have a look. It was quiet satisfaction of aligning her daily actions. Life consistent. Okay, yes, this is. So life consistent with beliefs, aligning her daily actions with inner values. So connecting the daily actions with the inner values is the same as aligning with her beliefs. Let's just rule out the others though, because, we want to be doubly sure. It's only possible to be happy when you have no financial worries. So she talks about financial here, but is it only possible to be happy when you have no financial? Yeah, so she mentions her savings are dwindling, which means her savings are low, but she doesn't talk about it in the context of happiness. She just says that they're low. So it's not A. Requires a complete break from one last fight and friends. There's no suggestion that that's what the happiness is. A complete break. No, she talks more about the journey or being the end of the journey. And it's a temporary state that is followed by difficult times, nor was it the absence of hardship. No, although she mentions hardship, which means difficult times, she doesn't suggest anything temporary or short term about this. So correct answer, C. Well done. We've got through part 5. We've got 28 minutes, so let's crack on with part 6. And part 6 is, again, you're given a text of similar length to part 5. This time, though, they have taken sentences out of the text and they'll give you a list of sentences. In this case, we've got A to G. You must put the sentence back into its correct place within the text. Now, the challenge here is that there are 6 gaps and there are 7 sentences to choose from. So as it says here, there is 1 extra sentence which you do not need to use in this. So it's quite a difficult one. My tip here and my number 1 strategy here is to use reference words. And I can see already that the options have them. So for example, the words like these, this again, such a high concentration. So these are what we call reference words in English. And what we need to do is try and match those reference words to parts of the text either before or after that gap. And normally after the gap as well, there are other reference words that we can also use. So let's dive straight in and we'll see as we go through. So deep in the heart, like I mentioned there, the Okavango. So really, you just want to skim the bits that you want to read in detail, the bits before and after the gap, and skim everything else. So unlike most deltas which flow into the sea, the Okavango empties onto open land, flooding the savannah and creating a unique wetland. It's paradox of water meeting. Okay, so unique wetland. We can't highlight in this part of the test. So something about, it's talking about its sort of structure or features or something like that. A traditional vessel allows. Not vessels. Vessels are like boats or things. It's not talking about that. This unusual geographical feature creates a lush oasis. It could be that. Let's drop that in. We'll come back to it. However, most tourists prefer to travel. Again, that's talking about transport. We don't worry about that. Any disruption to the delicate can have catastrophic consequences for the ecosystem. It's talking more about the structure and the feature. It's not talking about the sort of ecosystem or anything. Consequently, the floodwaters take several months to travel down the river. So unique, creating unique. Consequently, the floodwaters take several months to travel down. This is tempting. Panhandle. This is tempting, but I don't like the word consequently because there's no consequence here. There's nothing. Planting the savannah and creating a unique wetland. Yeah, I'm going to go for this one first. I'll come back to this later, but let's carry on. And before we carry on, let's take a look quickly. So this unusual geographical feature, this is what I'm thinking is the relation. This is why I'm thinking it's this one, because it's a unique wetland. And a unique wetland is an unusual geographical feature. Unusual, it's unique, so it's not common. Creates a lush oasis in another otherwise challenging landscape. So yeah, so scientifically important. Okay, so this paradox of water meeting deserts. So it sort of talks about this idea of this unique wetland, water and desert in the previous two sentences. So I think it's that. Life below the deltas during the summer months, heavy rainfall fills the tributaries that eventually feed the Okavango. Time the water arrives in Botswana, the local dry season at its peak, and the landscape is starved of water. So again, this is starting to talk about the dangers. So it's not A and C. Those are talking about boats and transport. Okay, it's not really talking about the ecosystem consequence. So ecosystem, you might expect to see things like animals and nature and how it's doing all that. It's more still talking about the structure. I like E here because there's a definite consequence, but let's see. Witnessing firsthand reminds us why. Okay, so prioritize, it might be a global priority. By the time the water arrives in Botswana, local dry season is at its peak. That feels like it could come more to the end. There's nothing that I can connect witnessing the heavy rainfall, maybe. Reminds us why preservation, but it sort of says preservation remains a global priority. I'd expect to see that in a paragraph that talks more about the global importance of the Okavango Delta in this case. So I don't like that one. Such a high concentration of wildlife. Well, this isn't talking about wildlife. So I like E here because I can see the consequence. The consequence is the heavy rainfall fills the tributaries and eventually feed the Okavango. Consequently, the floodwaters take several months to travel down the river system before finally reaching the delta's panhandle. By the time the water arrives, bingo, the reaching. So it takes months to reach. By the time it arrives in Botswana, the dry season is at its peak and the landscape is starved of water. Yes, that fits. Okay, next up. So a good idea here is when you get to each paragraph, think to yourself, what is the main idea of this paragraph? Because that helps you can see already I'm thinking about, well, this belongs in a paragraph that talks about the global issues, or this one talks about something that has transport in it. So it's a good question to ask yourself, what's the main idea as you go through? Sheer variety of creatures that call this place home is staggering. From the majestic African elephant. Okay, so this is bringing in the wildlife and the animals. So this might be an option here. The delta supports a complex web of life that has evolved to thrive in ever-changing environment. Predators such as lions, leopards are frequently spotted. I'm fairly certain it's this one. So we talk about the sheer variety of creatures. Such a high concentration of wildlife, that fits sort of thematically because you've got so many creatures, and then it talks about such a high concentration of wildlife. So we've got the African elephant, the Sitatunga antelope, makes this region a prime destination for photographers and nature enthusiasts, although we do need to sort of think about this last bit. I didn't see anything else with wildlife. I did see one with tourists. Nature enthusiasts, of course, go such lines. Okay, yes, that's the connection. Okay, so region, a prime destination for photographers and nature enthusiasts from across the globe. Predators such as lions and leopards are frequently spotted. So yeah, so spotted by tourists, or in this case, photographers and nature enthusiasts. So there we have it. Great, that is the correct answer. Okay, tourism, here we go. So we've got a few with tourism here. So this might bring the boat ones in. Tourism, its Okavango is carefully managed to ensure that the environment remains unspoiled. The government has introduced a low volume, high value approach. Okay, one of the most iconic ways to explore the dugout canoe steered by a local guide who stands at the back. This slow pace method. Okay, here is the method of transport. So we've got the canoe here. So which were the two? This one and this one, A and C. Unlikely to be D and F because they're talking about something different. So let's think about A and C. These traditional vessels allow visitors to glide through the reeds. Most tourists prefer to travel by motorized boat, covering more distances quickly. Okay, it's not C, because if you look at the bit after, this slow pace method, this suggests fast or high speed. So it's A, I think. Let's just make sure though. These traditional vessels, so again, that reference, these traditional vessels refers, I think, to this dugout style canoe, allows visitors to glide silently through the reeds, offering a unique perspective of the aquatic environment. Minimal disturbance to wildlife. Yes, yeah. So this slow pace method glides silently through the reeds. Yeah, that's the one there. Okay. Two more to go. And we've got 3 options left. That's good. So we only need to use 2 more. Remember, there's always one we don't need to use. Okay. However, this pristine wilderness faces significant challenges. Okay. When I say try to think of what the main idea is, a good place to start is the first sentence of each paragraph. This is usually where the main idea or the topic sentence exists. Not always, but a lot of the time. So this is a really good one. So, however, this pristine wilderness faces significant challenges that could threaten its future. So this is talking more than about the sort of dangers and the climates and things. So this is where I would expect perhaps one of these two to come in, D or F. Furthermore, there are ongoing concerns regarding industrial activities upstream, such as potential water diversion for agriculture or mining projects. Okay. Therefore, oh good, so we've got a therefore, so there's some form of consequence we need to think about from one of these. Therefore, protecting the delta requires international cooperation. Okay, let's take a look at D. Any disruption to this delicate cycle could have catastrophic... Looks good. Witnessing this firsthand reminds us why its preservation must remain. Okay, but let's have a look at this. So disruption, what could the disruption be? Well, that could be the water diversion or the mining projects. Those could be disruptions, as could be the climate change earlier on as well. I think witnessing this firsthand, what are we witnessing? Firsthand means in person, see something in person. We're not seeing, it's not suggesting that we're seeing it. It's more suggesting or talking about them as disruptions, as it says there, or problems. So for this one, D is the correct answer. So any disruption to this delicate cycle. So again, let's just see if we can link up this delicate cycle. Climate change, wilderness faces challenges, droughts permanently reduce the flood area, furthermore ongoing concerns. Yeah, so the delicate cycle of sort of rainfall patterns, that is what delicate cycle is being referred to, could have catastrophic consequences for their ecosystem. Okay, perfect. So we've got 2 left to go and the final one. And okay, for those lucky, so this is the last sentence, this is the last paragraph. So we're expecting something, I would argue, a bit more global about the topic. For those lucky enough to visit the experience of being such a remote, wild place, it's often life-changing. There is a sense of timelessness in the Delta where rhythms of nature dictate the pace of life and the modern world feels... For those lucky enough to visit. Okay, yeah. So we've got, funnily enough, our last 2 options, we've got people. and for those lucky enough to visit. So in the first one, we've got tourists and taking a motorized boat. That's not the meaning of this paragraph. This is a more summary sort of explaining why the Okavango Delta is so important and its preservation. I think it's F, but let's just rule it in first. Witnessing this firsthand. So for those lucky enough to visit, so there's a sense of the people who've been there, who see this for themselves or in person, reminds us why its preservation must remain a global priority. It is a place, that feels human development and fundamentally content. So this sort of supports this next sentence, the reason why its preservation must remain a global priority, or it supports why they're saying that. Whereas this one, travel by motorized boat to cover large distances more quickly, has got nothing to do with, we're not talking about transport or boating here. So C, let's just make sure we've used all of them. We have. C is the one that we're not using, and there are our answers. Well done. 15 minutes to go, one more part. So let's jump ahead to part 7. Hopefully, if there's time, we can check our answers, but if not, we don't need to worry. Okay, part 7. In this part of the test, you are given a text. Now, that text might be split into 4, 5, or sometimes 6 paragraphs. It might be a text where 4, 5, or 6 different people are saying something, or it might be one continuous text, like a newspaper article, for example, where you are then asked to locate specific information. So you are given a list of questions, and you must choose which paragraph or which section do these belong to. So there's a lot of scanning for specific information here is going to help us. Skimming and scanning are going to be really important here. But let's just quickly go through the instructions. You're going to read 4 texts, okay, so in this case it's 4, about people who started charities. Okay, so this one is 4 different people. Okay, so we've got the 4 people here, and we've got our ones here. Now, how do you begin doing this? A few ways. My sort of way of doing this is quickly read through all 4, and then we'll come to get an idea of what things are like. You can highlight certain words if it helps you as well. And then we'll come to this, and we're going to use these questions to then scan for specific information. So we're going to get the general idea, then we're going to go and scan for specific information. Okay, let's start. Feel free to pause the video. I'll keep it on screen, but do feel free to pause the video. In fact, I might exit split view here so I can see it more. Okay. Satisfaction, see people reconnect. Okay. Okay, sorry, I've got a bit quiet because I just wanted to skim through all those. Okay, so if you don't have time, let's say you get to this section and you're running out of time and this is the last one, Don't worry about skimming through all of it. If you have the time, yes, do it. But if you don't have time, just come directly to the questions and use the questions to help you understand what information you're looking for. For example, 43, which person was encouraged by a relative to use a particular location? Now, relatives, so we need family members. So let's scan through all of these. Because I have read through it, I know that some of them are talking about it. So let's see where there is relatives based here. So we've got families in the front, grandfather. I did see a cousin and a brother as well. I remember. Yeah, there's the brother, and yeah, here my cousins. There we go. Excellent. Just quickly make sure. Don't remember this one having any family members. Okay, perfect. So, which person was encouraged by a relative? So we know where the relatives are to use a particular location. So. Families that grow their own produce would be more sustainable. No. Began after I saw how isolated my grandfather felt when his friends passed away. No. Oh, there's another relative there. Recently used her new skills to find a long lost cousin. That's not to use a particular location. My brother eventually suggested using bingo. That's the using a particular location. So the answer is D. Which person had to deal with a lot of administrative hurdles at the start? Okay, I do remember seeing the word hurdles, but again, just because I see the word hurdles doesn't mean that it's going to be the right answer, but I do remember seeing the word hurdles. Administrative hurdles, so things like, oh gosh, documentation, paperwork, negotiation, maybe something to do with like organization or something like that. That's what we're looking for. Which person had to deal with a lot of administrative hurdles at the start? So at the start, initially, that's not anything about job. So no, it worked hard. Oh, bingo. Here we go. Negotiating with the local. What's this? Negotiating with the local council for a plot land. The paperwork seemed endless. Okay, that's looking quite likely. I remember sitting in the cold office wondering, banking job, but getting funding was initially impossible. Funding isn't necessarily administrative hurdles, and there's only one of them. This talks about a lot or more than one. We've got negotiating, paperwork, plots of land, etc. Stray cats turned away. Time for professional football. Be on the pitch. Look, the biggest hurdle. Hurdle. There you go. So just because you see it there and there doesn't mean it's this one. But let's just make sure it isn't. The biggest hurdle was finding a suitable venue. Yeah, no, that's not administrative. So we said it was A. Negotiating, paperwork, etc. A is the correct answer. Which person spent their own money to get the project started? I remember seeing something like this. They used their own savings or something. Bingo, there it is. Is that right? Yes. I started feeling friends using my own savings. Spent their own money. That means that to get the project started. And it says I started using my own savings. Perfect. So we can go for C for that one. How long left? 8 minutes and a few questions to go. We can do this. No problem. Which person was surprised by how many people wanted to help? Okay, so looking for help. Oh man, 5 volunteers. That's possibly one. One of the first students, an 80-year-old woman. That moment was incredibly emotional. One, I'm exhausted most days. No. Now these are the same neighbours. Big supporters. Okay, and hurdle. I was worried local youths. More engaged. Okay, so there's a few options here. So, which person's surprised by how many people wanted to help? So this isn't helping. Although he's surprised here, it's not helping. It would take the educational side seriously. So it's actually, it's not to do with support or help. Now those same neighbours are big supporters. Okay, but is there surprise here? No suggestion of surprise, however, once overwhelming. I'd expected maybe 5. Bingo. Yes, A is the one. Was surprised. I'd expected 5 volunteers, but 30 people showed up. So yeah, the idea here is you expect something and then so many more people. So you would be surprised by that, essentially. Which person mentioned specific success involving finding a family member? Yes, so we had the family members before, so let's just highlight them again. Children, there was a grandfather, also a cousin we saw. There was also a brother, I remember. Where is it? My brother and my cousins. Okay, so the question is, which person mentioned specific success involving a person finding a family member? Okay, so finding a family member. His friends passed away, children, teaching families how to grow. We have that one there, one of our first. Perfect. Finding someone else. So the correct answer is B. Excellent. Okay, we've got a few more to go. Which person faced some initial opposition to their plans? Oh, I think I remember this. This was the neighbours, wasn't it? I think. Where was it? It was the neighbours. We eventually proved that our presence actually improved the neighborhood. Yes, at the beginning, some neighbors weren't particularly supportive, complaining that a rescue. Yes, that's it. Which person faced some initial opposition to their plan? So at first, some of the neighbors weren't particularly supportive, complaining that a rescue center would be too noisy. That is initial opposition. Exactly. So the correct answer is C. Which person had a moment of doubt when they considered returning to their previous career? There was someone talking about banking, I remember. Where was it? Banking, there it is. Perfect. I remember sitting in the cold office wondering if I should return to my banking job. Yeah, so that's returning to a previous career. Let's just make sure that nothing else mentions the previous careers. There was one talking about a chef, wasn't it? But that's here. But that's not returning to the career. That's using the skill in the charity that they're running. Veterinary nurse, still the same. Retiring professional football. There's no doubt, though, expressed in this. So where was that doubt? It was in B. So the correct answer is B. Which person describes how people physically helped prepare a building? Building. Okay, which one talked about a building? There was something, I think, was it C? Talk about the rescue by managing population responsibly. Okay, perfect. So I was worried that the local youths. He and my cousin spent weeks painting. Sorry, that's exactly where the key is. Perfect. So it says how physically helped. So the brother helped, but physically helped are the cousins. He and my cousin spent weeks painting and fixing the roof. So D is the correct option. Perfect. We've got 2 more to go and 3 minutes left. We can do this. Okay. Which person says they originally planned to help in a different way? Was that the chef or the charity cat? The cat one. I frequently sit no one to care for them. Using my own savings at the beginning. No, there was the chef. I thought never intended to start a charity until I noticed several children when they were arrived at school. But chef initially thought about is that it? I initially thought about, but I soon realized teaching. Right. Which person says they originally planned to help in a different way? This looks to be the different way. I originally thought about just donating food. That's one way, but I soon realized that teaching families to grow their own produce would be more sustainable. That's another way. So yes, I think it is 51A. Perfect. And 52, which person, 2 minutes to go, which person was surprised by the attitude of young people they were helping? This is the footballer. I remember he said that the young people or youths, I was worried that the local youths wouldn't take. Yes. Do you see, really, when you do this part, you'll see what I'm doing here, which is remembering what I read before. I know that probably sounds a bit silly, but keep in mind all of the information you're taking in, because when you get to the questions, you might do that and go, oh, I remember that person said this, or because you're highlighting, and using the highlighting is really good because it forces you to remember lots of things. So this is a really good one. Let's just double check though. Which person was surprised by the attitude of young people? Well, youths, that's young people. They were helping, wouldn't take the educational side seriously, but they've been surprisingly engaged. Perfect. So surprised by the attitude. He thought they wouldn't take it seriously, but surprisingly engaged. D is the correct answer. So that is the end of Reading and Use of English Part 7 and the end of the Reading and Use of English paper. We did it with a minute to spare. Well done if you've made it this far. We will now move on to the writing paper in the next section. So the writing paper of the B2 First exam consists of 2 parts, and you'll be given 80 minutes to complete it. In part 1, you will be asked to write an essay, and you must write between about 140 to 190 words. In part 2, you will be given 3 questions, and you must choose one of the questions. You might be asked to write an email, a review, a report, or an article. So let's get started. Okay, so when we first enter the writing paper, this is what we'll see. We're currently in part 1. So we've got the exam question on the left-hand side, and we've got the box where we'll type our answer on the right-hand side. If we have a quick look at part 2, we have our 3 options. So when we come to part 2, we'll choose one of those and start writing our answer. But let's start with part 1. And let's start then by reading the essay questions. So, is online shopping better than shopping in physical shops? Okay, so we have our question, and you'll also get some notes that you must write about. So for this one, we have convenience, local businesses, and the third one will always be your own idea. Now, remember, you must include all 3 of these points in your essay. So in this example, our essay will include something about convenience, local businesses, and our own idea. Okay, so how do we begin the essay? Well, the first thing you must do is plan. Now, the benefits of planning are that it will help you with the structure of your essay, but it will also help you to come up with ideas and what you want to write about and how you want to write your essay. The reason you want to plan is because you don't want to think about these things whilst you're writing your essay. And actually, a good plan helps you write a better essay, and it helps you write more fluently as well, because you've already come up with the ideas and the structure. So what does a good structure of an essay look like? Well, first of all, we'll start with our introduction. Then in the second paragraph, we might want to talk about point 1. In the third paragraph, we might want to talk about point 2. And in the fourth paragraph, we might want to talk about point 3. And the final paragraph will be our conclusion. So this is a good starting point. This would be 5 paragraphs, which is absolutely fine. But what we now want to do is think about how the essay question relates to that plan. And to start with, I think a really good idea when you've got an essay question like this one, so this is sort of like a yes, no, is online shopping better than shopping in physical shops? I think a good place to start is actually to answer that question. What do you think? Is online shopping better than shopping in physical shops? Now, my opinion is yes, online shopping is better. Now, the reason we want to start like this is because then this helps us to come up with a more detailed structure and ideas about how we want to write this essay. So let's take a look at our points then, and let's see how do these points relate to our overall opinion. So if this is our sort of overall viewpoint, this is what we think. What do we want to say to support that? Well, I think first of all, convenience supports that idea or that viewpoint that online shopping is better. because it's more convenient, right? You can do it from the comfort of your own home. So let's come up with ideas of how convenience might support our viewpoint. So we just had one there, which was a really good one. So you can shop from the comfort of your own home. That's a really nice phrase. It means you can do it from your own home, but you can be sort of comfortable or relaxed whilst you're doing it. What else can we say about convenience? So convenience in terms of location. What about convenience in terms of the fact that you can do it on your phone as well? So not just where you shop, but how you shop. So we'll keep the notes quite simple for now, but you can shop using your mobile phone or tablet or other device. So those are two really nice points that we can have for convenience. Now, if we think about the next point, local businesses, is this supporting our overall viewpoint? Now, immediately when I see this, I think about how local businesses are impacted by online shopping, and usually it's quite negative, right? Because, you know, lots of local businesses cannot compete with the price or the cost or the convenience of online shopping, so they lose customers. If they lose customers, they close down, and that affects the sort of local area, right? So I think this is probably where we want to look at or start to think about for this point. And the reason that that's important, because what it does nicely here is that it allows us to show the other side of the argument. So whilst we have a certain viewpoint, we're recognizing the other side, which is always very good in an essay that's balanced and sort of considers all viewpoints before we summarize in our conclusion. So what can we say then? So physical shops. So if we talk about, local businesses, let's start to think about what points we can think about. So physical shops, and what can we say about physical shops, do we think? Because I suppose they support local businesses, physical shops. So physical shops support local businesses. And without local business, without sort of online shopping may cause local businesses to close down. So local businesses might, or say often, close down. Again, we won't worry too much about the language at this. We just want the ideas. So local businesses might often close down. And therefore, what's the impact of that? And what's the negative impact of that? Well, people lose jobs. And it impacts the sort of life, or the how can we say that, sort of better, we want a better expression than the life, but this is the idea, the life of the town or city centre. So what we're saying here is, without physical shops, local businesses suffer, and therefore the town or city centre or the shopping area suffers, and therefore people might lose their jobs, right? If local businesses close down, that's meaning a loss of jobs. So that will work, I think, really nicely as a sort of contrasting paragraph that we'll have. So what about the third point then? Well, first of all, we need to come up with something. Now, the other benefit of answering the question first in your mind or in your notes is that you can now come up with an idea. And I think it would be good here to come up with another idea that supports our overall viewpoint. So if what we're saying in this essay is yes, online shopping is better, we've got one point that supports that with convenience. We've got another point that sort of shows the other side of the argument with local businesses. And now we want to bring in a point that also supports it, right? So we've got the balance more towards yes, online shopping is better. So let's think, why is online shopping better than physical shops? We've got convenience. What about something like cost is one idea. Typically, it's cheaper to buy things online than in physical shops. The other one we might want to talk about maybe is choice, or perhaps variety. So typically there is more variety or more choice when you shop online. So we'll choose between one of these. I think both of those are really good. I think let's go for, should we go for choice? Yeah, let's go for choice and variety, basically. We'll pick one of those. I mean, they mean the same thing. So let's go for choice. So what we can say here, what's the benefit of online shopping in terms of choice? Well, simply put, there is more choice when shopping online, right? So we're able to go to many different shops from not just from the convenience of our own home, but we can go to many different shops in one sort of shopping session very quickly, and we can buy lots of different things. Or we might want to say, to put that in slightly better, it might be, what are the benefits of that? Wider range of products, which is a really sort of nice way of saying the same thing. And what else can a customer do when they shop online in terms of choice? I guess they can compare, right? So they can compare products and find the best deals. Okay, so that's a really good sort of detailed structure so far. Now, if we come back to our basic structure, we sort of had 5 points here. Now, what you might be tempted to do, or what you might think about doing, is write your introduction, talk about the convenience, which is a yes, for online shopping is better. Talk about local business, which is a sort of showing the other side, and then come back to choice to sort of support the opinion again. So does it make sense to have it follow in this particular order? It's a good order, and you can absolutely do it like that. But what I think might be slightly better here is to have 4 paragraphs instead of 5. And rather than talk about convenience and choice in 2 separate paragraphs, we can talk about them in the same paragraph. So that one paragraph can support our sort of idea or our opinion here, which is great because it helps with the structure. It's very clear. Introduction, this is why I think yes. This is the other side that I've considered. And then my conclusion is, in conclusion, whilst there are benefits to both, online shopping is better, or usually better, or something like that. In general, what the conclusion will do is sort of say, whilst physical shops, and then something, what can we say? Whilst physical shops are, are good, probably want a better word than good, but that's the point. Whilst physical shops are good, online shopping is, say, more convenient, offers a better variety of products, and more choice. Maybe that's probably it, is more convenient, and offers, we can say, and offers the customer, what about this? Offers the customer a better variety of products. Yeah, let's keep it like that. We can, again, this is the purpose of this, is just to get the ideas down, but you can see what the conclusion is doing here. It's sort of saying, yeah, whilst physical shops are good, online shopping is better. It's reaffirming our point, but phrasing it slightly differently, which makes a really nice sort of conclusion. Okay, so that's a really nice plan that we've got here. So if we just sort of take away the basic plan, so this is what we've got now. So our viewpoint, yes, we've got the main body of this. So actually, this is going to be paragraph number 2, this is going to be paragraph number 3, and this is going to be paragraph number 4. Now, the first paragraph, of course, is going to be our introduction. So what makes a good introduction in sort of a B2 first writing part 1 essay? So typically a good structure to follow, and I think this will be a good one here, because we know our viewpoint. I think we want to give our viewpoint or our opinion quite early, and I think an introduction is a good place to do that. Now, you don't have to give your opinion in the introduction, that's fine. But I think on this sort of essay where we're sort of saying what our viewpoint is throughout, it's good to sort of introduce what that is and what we think. And then we're going to use the other paragraphs to support that. So something along the lines of, and what we'll have here is a sort of general statement about the topic. So in this case, shopping, and the differences between online shopping and shopping in physical stores. And then we want to bring in our viewpoint, I think here, or bring in our opinion, but in relatively short form. The introduction isn't going to be big or long. And likewise, the conclusion isn't going to be very long. We can maybe be able to do it in one sentence, in fact, in the conclusion, which again is fine as long as it's there and it sort of summarizes what the points you're making. So what's our opinion? Yes, we know that. So how can we say, so we want to be balanced here. So we might want to say something along the lines of, although both shopping online and we might add this is just to get the idea down. So although both of shopping online and physical shops have their advantages, are good or something like that. So yeah, why not that? So although both shopping online and shopping in physical stores have advantages, I believe that shopping online is usually better. Now that's the sort of second part of our introduction. That's the opinion. What do we want to say about a sort of general statement? Now, we might want to say about how online shopping is perhaps more preferred by people, right, than going to physical shops, because that again is we're sort of identifying the trend and we're subtly introducing our own sort of viewpoint here. So we could say something along the lines of today, and then how can we say today? Why don't we have something like many people prefer shopping online to, we don't say to physical, say to shopping. I want to reduce the amount of times we're saying shopping rather than going to, that's better, physical shops. Now, there we go. So we've got our general statement. And we've got our opinion. Now, the good thing about planning this is we don't worry too much about the language yet, but we will worry about it a bit later, because what we also want to do is not repeat ourselves or not use the same words, or we want to really show off the language that we know, okay? So with this plan in mind then, let's go ahead and write our essay now. Obviously, we're using the box here to plan, so we'll be able to, what I think I might do is just start writing it up here, and then we'll reference, as we complete each part, we can start to remove them from our plan, just so space-wise it sort of helps us. So, also as well, in the exam, you'll be able to do this, which actually makes it much easier, so we can have a bigger space to work with. That's a lot better, so we can see everything. Okay, so introduction then. Is online shopping better than shopping in physical shops? So we can say, now today is a good word. Actually, what's better than today is a really nice one, particularly when talking about trends. Nowadays. Nowadays is a really nice one. Nowadays, many people prefer shopping online rather than going to physical stores. So we've identified the trend. That's our general statement. Physical stores or physical shops, rather, we can say. Let's keep it like that. Okay, so now we want to bring in our opinion, which we've got here. And again, we can think about the language that we want to use. We don't want to repeat too much. So as you can see already in our opinion, we're sort of repeating the same thing. Although both shopping online and shopping in physical stores, well, we've already referenced them here, so we don't need to repeat that. So what about, although both have advantages, I believe that shopping online is usually better. So what about that? Is usually better. That's fine. Is the both okay? Although both have advantages, I think that sounds fine. Grammatically, it's correct. What about although both is good, but what does both mean? Maybe and again, we don't want to repeat both online shopping and going to physical shops have advantages, because we don't need to repeat all of that again. Although both ways of shopping, how about that? So our introduction. Nowadays, many people prefer shopping online rather than going to physical shops. Although both ways of shopping have advantages, I believe that shopping online is usually better. Great. Shopping online is usually better. That's fine. It's a general opinion. There is our introduction. So that's good. So we can now remove that from our notes. I like to keep my viewpoint here just because I think it keeps us focused on the points that we're making. Okay, so now we're saying rather, in the second paragraph, as we've said in our plan, our second paragraph is going to talk about the convenience and also about the choice as well. So this might be a little bit longer. That's fine if this is longer, because you want to give, I think, more space and more words to the sort of arguments that you're making. So you don't want your introduction to be too long, because then you start to run out of words to write about your main ideas and what you actually think. So let's talk about, and again, we can come back to the language, but one of the reasons, so we've got two reasons. One of the reasons is convenience, and we're absolutely fine to repeat the word here. If I can spell convenience correctly, we're fine to repeat the word. That's okay. It's used there, but we're sort of talking about it as the point, so that's absolutely fine. So one of the reasons is convenience. Now, what about we said, what points do we make? So you can shop from the comfort of your own home. So that's a good one to bring in. So people are able to shop from the comfort of their own home and at a time that is best for them. So that's a really nice sort of way to introduce this, because you're saying about the comfort of their own home and the fact that it's at a time best for them, right? So you can shop at 10 o'clock at night or 6 o'clock in the morning, typically when shops aren't open. So that's the point we'll make there. What else did we say in our plan? You can shop using your mobile phone. Perfect. Now we want to add extra information. We did see one earlier in the reading text that adds information. So this is why I love keeping the reading in your mind, because you can use phrases if you can remember them from that reading text. We saw that, I think it was in part 3, wasn't it? Because we had to change addition from add anyway. Sorry. So in addition, to buy products. Yeah, what about that? I think that sounds quite nice. It's good, it gets us in. Sorry, the reason I was thinking about it was, would we have enough to say about this? So in addition, customers are able to use their mobile phones to buy products. Let's make sure our spelling is correct. Now we've got the double are able to here. So we might want to do something with the language. We can just simply change that to can. So customers can use their mobile phones to buy products. Now, what also do we want to introduce here? Well, we want to introduce the idea of choice. So we want to bring that in as well. Okay, so how can we do that? So we can say, so we've got one of the reasons is convenience. Another reason is choice. And then what did we say about choice? There is more. Yes, so we can say customers usually have a wide range, or usually have, maybe let's not say customers usually have. Let's go back to our plan. Why don't we start with there is? There is typically a wider choice of, or actually let's use range. Range and choice mean the same thing, but we don't want to repeat choice, so that's good. There is typically a wider range of products available online, and customers can also compare products and find the best deals. Excellent. Now that reads quite nicely. Another reason is choice. There is typically a wider range of products available online, and customers can also compare products and find the best deals. That reads really nicely. Why don't we bring in an adverb here just to make this a little bit better? Customers can, let's talk about how easy it is, right? So let's talk about can easily. Whoops, that's probably not the best place to put it. And customers can also compare products easily. Why don't we say can easily rather than also? There's typically a way, and customers can easily compare products and find the best deals. Very nice. Okay, so this is our support. Let's check in on the word count. So if I just copy this or cut this out. So we are at 90 words. That's a good range. We've got 140 to 190. So remember, we've got our conclusion. We've also got our third point we're going to talk about, or third paragraph, local businesses. If we are under, we can then start to think about how we can sort of make or add more information to this. Okay, so let's bring our plan back in. So we have done convenience and choice. So we can remove that now from our plan. And local businesses. So what do we want to make? What's the point we want to make? Well, we want to make a contrast here, don't we? Because we want to bring in the other viewpoint. So the other viewpoint is, as we mentioned, that physical shops are important because they support local businesses. So let's say that. Now, to introduce us, we can start with however. Physical shops are important because they support local businesses. So that's a good start, right? So that's what we want to sort of say. Then we wanted to say if local businesses or if local shops, so we don't repeat businesses, if local shops, local and, what about if local and independent shops? That's nice, isn't it? Because independent shops, ones that are unique, they're not part of a franchise. Independent shops closed down, comma, it can have a negative impact. And preposition, I'll let you think of what the correct preposition is there. This is a learning opportunity after all. It can have a negative impact on the town or city centre and may result, the preposition for you, people losing their jobs. Okay, that's looking good. Did you get the prepositions? Impact on something and may result in people. This is a really nice phrase, actually. May result in something, and in this case it's people, and then we've got the verb ing. So result in people losing their jobs. Okay, good. So that's good so far. Have we mentioned all of the points that we wanted to? Yep, could close down, people losing their jobs. And we talked about the life in the city centre. The way we phrase that is it has a negative impact on the town or city centre. Maybe if we're looking for words here, we may just want to talk a bit more about the economy, but we'll come back to that. That's just if we need to increase the word count a little bit. Okay, so we've done local businesses. We've done our third paragraph. We can delete it because we've mentioned everything there, so we can just refer back to this if we need to. How are we doing on the word count? We're at 128 words. That's looking good. So now we want to write our conclusion, and this conclusion can be quite short. It doesn't need to be too long. And what we want to do is sort of summarize our opinion. So when you're writing a conclusion, think about, what have I said? What have I said, and how can I summarize what I've said? So we've shown, on the one hand, that physical shops are important, or we might want to say valuable. That's a nice word that we can use. So we've said that the physical shops are valuable. What we've also said is that online shopping is more convenient, and there is a better choice. Now we want to rephrase that slightly, but that's basically what we're saying. Okay, so we've got a nice contrasting conclusion that we can write here. We can say, on the one hand, Physical shops are important. However, online shopping is more convenient, etc. And that summarizes our sort of viewpoint, I think, quite nicely. So let's start with the classic. No problems with using the phrase in conclusion. That's absolutely fine. Don't forget the comma after it. So we want to introduce a contrast. So let's use, why don't we use the word while? We've used that here. We use whilst, same thing. We use while. So we said while shops are good, but actually we've made that a little better in terms of the vocabulary range. We're using valuable. So in conclusion, while physical shops are important, or valuable, we could say important, that's fine, to the local community, that's what we've said. Then we want to bring in the other contrast, which is our viewpoint. So then we want to say online shopping is more convenient and offers customers, what did we say, a better variety of products. There we go. So let's remove that. That's not part of our word count. We've done our conclusion. So we've got our viewpoint, and the magic total that brings us to 152 words. Excellent. So we are within the word count. Don't worry if you're more towards the 140, that's fine. If you've expressed all of your points and all of your ideas, it's fine. Try not to exceed 190 if you can, just because it means you're probably talking too much about a certain point and you're not sort of being succinct enough. Remember, the essay should be balanced like this one. Yes, we present a viewpoint of one particular side, but we're also recognizing the other side or the other point as well. So that's what we've done here. The one thing you do want to make sure of course, is spelling and sort of language and vocabulary range, because we've got the structure. The structure will come and the organization will come when you plan. And also the plan will mean that you're thinking about all of the ideas. So that's why it's really good, because remember, those are two of the points you're marked on: your organization and have you included all of the points in your essay, which we've done. So that's great. One of the other things you're obviously marked on is your vocabulary, grammar, your range of language, so the language that you're using. So let's, as we go through this now, let's quickly read through it, and we will check for spelling and check for grammar mistakes or vocab mistakes, and we'll see if we can maybe improve any areas in any way. So we did that with today. Rather than say today, we said nowadays. Really nice upgrade. So nowadays, many people prefer shopping online rather than going to physical shops. Yeah, that works. Rather than doing something is the correct grammatical form. Although both ways of shopping have advantages, I believe that shopping online is usually better. Good. So we've got the contrast there, both ways shopping advantages. Remember the comma because we've used although. Yep, that is good. Okay, one of the reasons is convenience. Nice. It's a nice short sentence. It's very punchy. It grabs the reader's attention, which I quite like about short sentences. So don't worry if you do have one or two short sentences, because it sets up the sort of tone and the engagement of the essay really nicely. So people are able to shop from the comfort of their own home and at a time that is best for them. Perfect. In addition, customers can use their mobile phones to buy products. Yeah, that's fine. Another reason is choice. Again, another short sentence. That's good. It sort of fits with the style that we're going for. And this is our third point as well. Don't worry, you don't need to say this is my third point or anything like that. As long as it's clear what the third point is, because you've set it up like this, that's absolutely fine. There is typically a wider range of products available online, and customers can easily compare products and find the best deals. Yeah, that reads really nicely. Okay, so then we bring in our contrast. However, comma, physical shops are important because they support local businesses. Excellent. So we clearly are hitting the points of the exam question. If local and independent shops close down, comma, it can have a negative impact on the town or city centre and may result in people losing their jobs. That's a really nice phrase to use there. Great. Let's delete the word economy. We're going to lose a word, but doesn't matter. 151 is still fine. And then in conclusion, while physical shops are important, maybe we want to, we said valuable here. The reason I'm changing it is because we already used important here. So let's show that we have a wide range of vocabulary. While physical shops are valuable to the local community, online shopping is more convenient. This is good as well. Don't worry about repeating convenience. Reason being is because we're showing we know the different forms of convenience. We use it as the noun form here. Here we're using it as the adjective. So that's absolutely fine. And offers. Yeah, this is nice as well. So look at what you're doing. You're dropping the subject in this, which is really nice. So online shopping offers customers. Online shopping is more convenient and offers customers. So you don't need to repeat online shopping is more convenient and online shopping offers customers. You don't need, that's unnecessary repetition. It's clear what you're referring to when you say offers. You're referring to online shopping. And offers customers a better variety of products. That is fine. You could say a better choice of products as well. I think we use variety. Did we use variety earlier on? Oh no, we used range, didn't we? So yeah, so variety is absolutely fine. And we're not saying wider variety, we're using better variety. There we go. That is the answer to the part 1 essay. Okay, we've got 42 minutes remaining, so let's move on to part 2. Now, part 2, we have the same word count applies, so we must again write between 140 to 190 words, and crucially, it says here, in an appropriate style. Now, the reason that that's there is because think about the genres of, we had genres, in part 1 of the reading, didn't we? Anyway, think of the genres. We've got article, report, review, or email. Now, if you think sometimes most often the email is going to be to a friend, so it's going to be a little bit more informal. You're not going to write in a really formal tone. The report, however, and sometimes more the report, maybe the review and article, but mostly the report, you're normally writing maybe to your boss or to the college or school principal or something like that. So the tone is going to be a little bit more formal. So that's why it's important to think about the style here. Okay, let's dive in and take a look at the genres that we've been given, or the questions that we've been given for part 2. So this first one is a review. You've seen this notice in online magazine, Restaurant Weekly, reviews wanted, a restaurant near you. Have you been to a restaurant that you really enjoyed? Write a review of the restaurant, describe the food, the atmosphere, say what you liked. Okay, that's quite a nice one. Restaurants, they're quite easy or nice to write about. Review, of course, so think of this, whenever you think of these genres, put yourself into the position. I find that writing, when it comes to writing, imagine that you're doing this in real life. So imagine that you're writing a review on Google, or you're leaving it on, TripAdvisor or something like that. I find that when you do that, it helps you to better sort of contextualize the writing that you're doing. So it makes it real, which means that you sort of have a better understanding of it, if that makes sense. It's a nice way of doing it. So we've got a review. Okay, so the best reviews be published on our website. What else have we got? Article. Okay, so you see this announcement in an English language magazine. Articles wanting a skill everyone should learn. What skill do you think everyone should learn? When would this skill be useful? How could young people learn it? Okay, that's interesting. We will publish the best articles on our website. Okay. And the third one is an email. Okay, so you've received this email from your, so here you go, English speaking friend Ben. So remember what we said about appropriate style. This is going to be slightly more informal because it's to your friend. So from Ben, subject, weekend trip. Hi, some friends and I are planning to visit your area for a weekend holiday. Which places do you think would be best to visit? What activities could we do there? Also, what should we take with us? Okay, thanks, Ben. Lovely. Okay, so Go for the one you feel most comfortable with. That's my advice here. Don't pick one because you think, oh, if I write a report, it's going to be, it's sort of a better genre. There is no better genre. You choose the one you feel most comfortable with. I'm going to go for the email just because, again, if I take my own advice, I write a lot of emails. So this, and messages. So this format is actually more comfortable for me. So this is the one I'm going to choose. So let's select it. Okay, so let's start with the plan and let's plan this email together. So let's think about the structure first of all, and also the ideas that we want to include. So of course, every email starts with saying hello. We then want to include what we call a pleasantry. So this is in an email where you might say something like, oh, it's great to hear from you. I hope you're well, something like that. So we'll include that in our email. Of course, remember, we're writing to our friend Ben, so we know them as well. So it's a really nice, natural thing to include in the email. Okay, up next, we want to come back to the email and make sure that we mention or we answer the questions that Ben is asking us. So, some friends and I are planning to visit your area for a weekend holiday. Okay, well, first of all, we want to think of the area, right? So again, keep it realistic. Choose the area that you know well. It might be the one you're living in now or your hometown. Think of real places that you know well. The more you can write about something you know, the more natural, the more comfortable you'll feel when you're writing. Okay, so in this case, I'm going to talk about London. And what do we want to say about London? So which places in London do you think would be best to visit? Okay, gosh. There are plenty to choose from. So let's think about this. Let's think about this maybe breaking it up in a day. What can you do in London over the course of a day? Let's start with, shall we have the South Bank? Because, yeah, South Bank a good one? I think so, because you can, what can you do? Walk along the river, see the London Eye. And what else can you do? You can take photos of Big Ben from the bridge. Yes, okay, that's a good start. So notice we're sort of saying, okay, the place and then the activity. So basically the place and what you can do there. So our first place is the South Bank. Next we have got, what can we have next in London? What about a museum? Should we go for a museum? Let's go for the Natural History Museum. You can, what can you do at the Natural History Museum? Learn about dinosaurs and the natural world. Also, it's free as well. So that's another benefit. Okay, probably one more that we can do. So let's say visit the South Bank in the morning, afternoon in the Natural History Museum, and then in the evening, what about Covent Garden, which is a very nice place in central London, because there, and what can you do there? You can see street performers. And there are also plenty of places to shop and to eat. Again, don't worry about the language. We'll work on that as we write it. We just want to get the ideas down now. Okay, so we've got our hello, our pleasantry. We've got all of those there. What else do we want to talk about? What should we take with us? Okay, so what should we bring? Now, what happens a lot in the United Kingdom? Well, it rains. So one of the things we can say is bring an umbrella, and we can use the phrase in case it rains. They might be walking a lot, I guess. They're going to be perhaps walking or maybe taking the underground. So bring a credit card or debit card. And actually, let's go for contactless credit card so that when they go into the underground, they can easily walk through. So you can easily use the underground. And what about a good pair of walking shoes? Because they might be walking around a lot. as well. Okay, so that's good. We then want to sort of have a sign off. So remember, in an email, typically at the end, you've written your email, and then you want to have a nice little way of saying, look forward to seeing you or something like that. So what about, so do we say when he's coming? It's a weekend holiday, but he doesn't say when he's going to come. And because he's our friend, we would want to see him as well. So what about something, does he say? No. Okay, so what about something like, let me know when you're coming. Something like that. Yeah, that's a nice way to sign it off. And then you can say to use his, for example, thanks, Dan, we'll end it. Okay, so that's a nice plan. Let's just double check that we've covered everything that he's asking. So plan for a weekend holiday. We can include that as well. Actually, in the pleasantry, I think it would be a nice idea to bring in reference or mention the weekend holiday as well. So not just say, great to hear from you, but something like, great to hear from you. I'm really happy that you're coming to London for a weekend trip or something like that. So let's just get that because that's quite nice language. So let's get that in. I'm really happy you're coming to London for a weekend trip. About something like there's so much to do. Or something like that. Notice lots of contractions. That's great. That's an informal style, so that's good. So we've got I'm. We used another one down here as well. Let me know when you're coming. Exclamation marks are really good for sort of more informal as well. So great. Okay, we have our plan. We know what we're going to talk about. We know that we've covered everything here. And we've got our structure. So that really helps with the organization, and that really helps with the sort of task achievement. What we've included in our email matches what we've been asked to write about. So again, we have 140 to 190 words. I think we should be able to do that with this plan here. 3 ideas. Of course, the nice thing about this, if you need to write more, you can bring in an extra idea, or if you need to write less, you can remove one of the ideas. So 3 is a good number. And again, shall we make this box a little bit bigger? Keep our plan here, and we can start to write. Okay, so hi Ben. And the pleasantry up next. So it's great to hear from you. I'm really happy that you're coming to London. And notice what's nice about this. We've mentioned the place in a really natural way. So we've said, we're not saying, oh, my hometown is London or something like that. You've mentioned it by saying, oh, it's great that you're coming to, in this case, London for a weekend trip. There's so much to do here. So you won't get bored. What about something like that? We don't want to overdo it with the exclamation marks, but the pleasantry is nice as well, because this is one, if you've gone over your word limit, so if you've gone over 190 words, this is one of the first places you can look to cut down on the email, because remember, you want to make sure that you're including everything. You don't want to cut, an activities necessarily, or you certainly don't want to cut a point. So you wouldn't want to cut also, what should we take with us? So come to the pleasantry first if you're over, and likewise if you're under and you really can't write anything else about the activities or things, then come back to the pleasantry. You can always add a couple of extra things there. Okay, so it's great to hear from you. I'm really happy that you're coming to London for a weekend trip. There's so much to do here, so you won't get bored. Okay, so we've done the pleasantry. We've mentioned London, so that's fine. What have we got up first? We are saying about South Bank. Okay, so let's be really enthusiastic about it. So what about, if I was to say I would recommend, that's okay. But again, it's quite formal. So what about I definitely suggest? That sounds quite nice, doesn't it? I definitely suggest, and then what can we say? I definitely suggest, what did we say? The South Bank, didn't we? Yep. So definitely suggest visiting the South Bank. It's a great place. Well, no, not maybe it's a great place. Definitely visiting the South Bank. How can we say this? Walk along the river. Oh, why not keep this simple as one sentence? Because, okay, I definitely suggest visiting the South Bank because you can walk along the river, see the London Eye, and take photos of Big Ben from the bridge. Excellent. That's a nice way, I think, of saying, just make sure, take photos of Big Ben from the bridge. Very nice. Okay, next up, the Natural History Museum. And what way could you say this? I mean, there's a few ways we could do this. Up next is the Natural History Museum. We could say it like that. Or why not, you know, something along the lines of, if you like museums, then so that's a nice way of starting it, right? Then I'd definitely, and we don't want to say I definitely again. So if you like museums, then I'd highly recommend the Natural History Museum. And let's bring in where you can learn, and what did we say? Learn about dinosaurs and the natural world. What about adding something like, it's a great way to spend a few hours and it's free. You can add to the language, but that's a nice way of saying it. It's a great way to spend a few hours. Okay, and then say in the evening. So remember, we're sort of going through the day. In the evening, what about something like head over to? That's really informal, and it's not, I mean, it just means we don't have to repeat I'd recommend, I'd suggest, or something like that. In the evening, head over to Covent Garden. We can keep it like that. Maybe keep it short. That's quite nice. It's quite punchy, isn't it? But yeah, maybe perhaps we can do that. In the evening, head over to Covent Garden. Here you can see street performers. So that's what we mentioned down just here. You can see street performers. So that's really good. And there are plenty of shops. We said plenty of places to shop, but plenty of shops is fine. Plenty of shops and places to eat. Yeah, let's do it like that. So there are plenty of shops. Because if we said there are plenty of places to shop and to eat, it sounds a bit awkward. So here you can see street performers and there are plenty of shops and places to eat. Lovely. Okay, so we've done all of this. We've mentioned all of the points. So we've got the places and the activities as well. So that's great. Let's just take that away from our plan. Again, same thing. Let's just see how we're doing on the word count. 116, we're doing good. So we've still got the last point to mention, the what should we take with us. Okay, so let's put that into a new paragraph. Okay, so you should bring, what should you bring, did we say? You should bring a contactless credit card so that you can easily use the underground to travel about. What else did we say? I'd also suggest bringing a good pair of walking boots and an umbrella in case it rains. Lovely. Okay, we'll read back through this again, but we just want to make sure we've covered everything in our plan, which we have. Umbrella, yep. Contactless credit card, Good pair of walking shoes. We said boots. I said boots, sorry. So that could be boots or shoes. Either one is no problem. And the sign off, great. So we said, let me know when you're coming. Thanks, Dan. Okay, so we've got the sign off. Excellent. So we've mentioned everything in our plan. Let's check the word count. 159 words. We're within our count, so we don't need to add anything. We don't need to take anything away. So now we can spend the rest of the time that we have reading through the email again, looking at the language is here. Because we planned this, and we planned this really nicely, we've got a good structure and we've got good organization, and we've also mentioned everything that we've been asked for. So when we read back through it, let's look at the language. Again, we want to check for spelling and grammar errors if we can see any. And also we want to check to see if we are repeating ourselves or if there's any opportunity to use a wider range of language. Okay, so let's go through that then. Okay, so hi Ben, it's great to hear from you. We can take away because we've used an exclamation mark. We don't want to use too many. We've got one here. That's fine. It's great to hear from you. I'm really happy that you're coming to London for a weekend trip. There's so much to do here, so you won't get bored. Great. I definitely suggest visiting. Yep, that's the right grammatical form. So suggest doing something or recommend doing something. And we're saying I would, but we've contracted that to I'd. I definitely suggest visiting the South Bank because you can walk along the river, see the London Eye, good comma, and take photos of Big Ben from the bridge. Lovely. If you like museums, then I'd highly recommend the Natural History Museum. It's fine to repeat the M there. That's no problem, as in the word museum there. That's absolutely fine. But because actually it's its name, it should be capitalized. I'd recommend the Natural History Museum where you can learn about dinosaurs and the natural world. It's a great way to spend a few hours and it's free. Brilliant. You could add in here if you wanted to make it just, you might want to say something like, and the best thing about it is it's free. If you wanted to, that's quite nice. It's quite nice a way to show off a bit of language. It's a great way to spend a few hours. And the best thing about it is it's free. We don't need to put that in, but just to give you an example of a way that you can sort of add to the language. A few hours and it's free. In the evening, head over to Covent Garden. Here you can see street performers and there are plenty of shops and places to eat. Lovely. You should bring a contactless credit card so that you can easily use the underground to travel about. I'd also suggest bringing a good pair of walking shoes and an umbrella in case it rains. Now, you've repeated suggest, but that's okay. You've only repeated it once before. We've used recommend. We could say something else here. So we've said you should travel about. You could maybe say as well as a good pair of walking shoes and an umbrella in case it rains. That's absolutely fine. But again, there's no real issue with repeating just once more the I'd suggest. Of course, the purpose of this email is you're suggesting things. So you're going to say it. You've already used some nice variation with I'd highly recommend and you should. So yeah, it's fine. I'd also suggest bringing a good pair of walking shoes and an umbrella in case it rains. Great use of the word in case. That's great. Nice sign off. Let me know when you're coming. Thanks, Dan. We're within 159 words. We've done it with 18 minutes to spare. So because we've got this time, again, it's a good idea to go back, check your part 1 before you submit, check the part 2 again, but we've done both of those. So we can finish there and the next section will be the listening. So there are 4 parts in the listening paper and it will last for about 40 minutes. You will hear each recording twice And in the paper-based version of the B2 First exam, you will have 5 minutes at the end of the listening paper to transfer your answers onto the answer sheet. If you're taking the computer-based version, you will have 2 minutes at the end of the listening paper to check your answers. Okay, before we begin, we'll do a quick sound check. Now, again, if you're taking the paper-based test, the listening will be played for you, as it will do in the computer-based version as well. In the computer-based version, you may just need to do a sound check yourself to make sure it's working and you can hear the audio okay. So let's go ahead and do that.
I'm going to give you the instructions for this test.
That sounds great. Okay, so before we click confirm and start listening, just to explain what will happen. So as soon as I press that button, the listening will begin, and we'll start with the examiner giving instructions about the listening paper, and then we'll jump straight in to listening part 1. As we go through, I will give you again some tips and strategies about how to deal with each section. And if you have any questions at all, just leave your comments below and I'll answer them. Okay, let's get started.
Cambridge English. B2 First. Listening. I am going to give you the instructions for this test. I shall introduce each part of the test and give you time to look at the questions. At the start of each piece, you will hear this sound. You will hear each piece twice. Remember that while you are listening, choose the correct answers on the screen. There will now be a pause. Please ask any questions now, because you must not speak during the test. Now, look at part 1. You will hear people talking in 8 different situations. For questions 1 to 8, choose the correct answer. 1. You hear a woman talking about her hobby of birdwatching.
Okay, so we heard the examiner introduce the listening paper. And notice at the beginning of each extract, the examiner introduces with 1, 2, and so on. But notice how that they only mention this first part here. So you hear a woman talking about her hobby of bird watching. He doesn't read out the question. So that's what we need to do in this short time that we have. We want to read the question, make sure we know what we're listening for, and then quickly read through the 3 options. So let's do that now.
My mum was really into birdwatching, and growing up, I used to think it was a bit boring. I couldn't understand why anyone would stand in a field for ages staring at a tree. These days, though, I quite like the whole routine, getting up early, walking somewhere quiet and just waiting. I also send photos to a few people in our local group, and they're always quick to tell me when I've spotted something unusual. Nothing beats the satisfaction of listening for calls, checking wing shape, and noticing tiny markings I'd missed before. My mum was really into birdwatching, and growing up, I used to think it was a bit boring. I couldn't understand why anyone would stand in a field for ages staring at a tree. These days, though, I quite like the whole routine, getting up early, walking somewhere quiet and just waiting. I also send photos to a few people in our local group, and they're always quick to tell me when I've spotted something unusual. Nothing beats the satisfaction of listening for calls, checking wing shape, and noticing tiny markings I'd missed before.
Correct answer is B. Well done if you said this. So the answer was towards the end of the script. So she said, nothing beats. That was our clue to understand that what's coming next is something that she's going to really enjoy, because the phrase nothing beats, and in this case I think she talked about identifying wingspan and a few other things to identify different birds, but the key phrase there was nothing beats, because that means what I like most about it. And that's what we were listening for. What does she enjoy most? She does sort of mention the other two. In C, she does say that she shares photos with her friends who are always quick to point out things, I think she says. But that's not, she never mentions that's what she enjoys most, just that she does it. So that's why it's really important to read the question to make sure exactly what you're listening for. Also, she says, I think she says, I quite like waking up in the morning, but she never actually says spending time outdoors is what she enjoys. It's more the sort of routine of it. So the correct answer for number 1 is B.
2. You hear a man talking about computer coding.
When I first tried coding, I spent ages comparing different programming languages, as if choosing the perfect one would solve everything. Then I picked one and realized the harder part was sitting with a problem long enough to understand it. I nearly gave up a few times. What made the difference was deciding to build something specific, a simple app to organize my photos. Suddenly, the tutorials made more sense because I had a reason for each step. You'll make mistakes and run into bugs, but part of the fun is figuring out how to fix them. When I first tried coding, I spent ages comparing different programming languages, as if choosing the perfect one would solve everything. Then I picked one and realized the harder part was sitting with a problem long enough to understand it. I nearly gave up a few times. What made the difference was deciding to build something specific, a simple app to organize my photos. Suddenly, the tutorials made more sense because I had a reason for each step. You'll make mistakes and run into bugs, but part of the fun is figuring out how to fix them.
3.
Okay, the correct answer here, again, well done if you said B. It is easier when you have a clear project in mind. So for the purposes of this tutorial, I'm making a few notes on what's being said so we can really work out why the other answers are incorrect. So he says for for C, so why this is wrong. He mentions this at the beginning, but he doesn't say that it depends on choosing the right program, because he says as if choosing the perfect one would solve everything. So he's sort of saying the opposite here. It doesn't matter. I'm going to choose the perfect one and then suddenly that's going to solve everything. So it doesn't depend on choosing the right program. And he sort of says how he gave up or almost gave up a few times. So he said he nearly gave up. But he doesn't ever mention or talk about something about patience here, or certainly more patience than people expect. He just sort of says, I nearly gave up a few times. What he does say for B that gives us the answer here is he says it's better when you know or you build something specific, and it makes things like the tutorials and things make more sense because he had a reason for doing it. So having this clear idea and this clear project, in this case an app, in mind. So B is the correct answer. It's easier when you have a clear project in mind.
3. You hear a conversation between a guest and a hotel employee.
Excuse me, I'm sorry to bother you, but the air conditioning in my room keeps making a loud clicking noise. I mentioned it when I checked in, but it's still happening.
That's surprising. It should have been looked at this afternoon.
I don't mind a bit of background noise, but I've got an early meeting tomorrow, so I really need to sleep.
Of course. I'll call maintenance now and ask them to come up straight away. If they can't sort it within half an hour, I'll arrange for you to move to another room before it gets too late.
Excuse me, I'm sorry to bother you, but the air conditioning in my room keeps making a loud clicking noise. I mentioned it when I checked in, but it's still happening.
That's surprising. It should have been looked at this afternoon.
I don't mind a bit of background noise, but I've got an early meeting tomorrow, so I really need to sleep.
Of course. I'll call maintenance now and ask them to come up straight away. If they can't sort it within half an hour, I'll arrange for you to move to another room before it gets too late.
Okay, the correct answer is C. arranging for a problem to be fixed. The reason it's not A is the hotel employee never apologizes for the poor service, so for the air conditioning not working properly. She just says, that's surprising. And I think she also says how it should have been fixed, or it should have been looked at this afternoon. So it's not an apology. She then says that I'll call maintenance now, and if they can't fix it, I'll arrange for you to stay in another room. So she's not explaining why a request is impossible. She says if it can't be fixed, then we will do it. So it's a conditional. So there's a chance it could be fixed. So the request is not impossible. So she's calling maintenance, which has a similar meaning to arranging for a problem to be fixed. So the correct answer for number 3 is C.
4. You overhear a woman phoning a furniture shop.
Hello, this is Claire Smith. I was in your furniture store last week looking for a new sofa for my living room. I asked whether there was a discount for people working in the healthcare sector. The assistant helping me didn't seem to know anything about it, despite it being mentioned on your website. Anyway, I thought I'd better phone to double-check before I make a decision. If the discount does apply, I'd probably go ahead with the green 3-piece sofa. You know, the one shown on your homepage. Hello, this is Claire Smith. I was in your furniture store last week looking for a new sofa for my living room. I asked whether there was a discount for people working in the healthcare sector. The assistant helping me didn't seem to know anything about it, despite it being mentioned on your website. Anyway, I thought I'd better phone to double-check before I make a decision. If the discount does apply, I'd probably go ahead with the green 3-piece sofa. You know, the one shown on your homepage.
Okay, the correct answer for number 4 is A, to clarify a specific shop policy. Now, at the beginning of this script, she talks about the shop assistant, but she doesn't criticize the shop assistant's attitude. So she doesn't say the shop assistant was really rude or the shop assistant didn't care. Rather, the shop assistant didn't know about this policy, even though it was on the website. So she's not criticizing the attitude of the shop assistant, so it's not B. To place an order for a sofa, now she says, if the discount does apply, then I'll probably go ahead and buy, I think it was the green sofa. So she's not phoning to place an order. She will place the order if the discount applies. And that discount is what the shop policy is. So she's phoning, she says, to double check if the discount applies, i.e. if there's a discount for people who work in the healthcare sector. So she is clarifying a specific shop policy. So the correct answer, number 4, is A.
5. You hear 2 colleagues discussing a new policy at work.
What do you think of this hot desking policy then?
I can see why they're doing it. Since people started working from home twice a week, half the desks are empty.
I see what you mean, but some teams need to sit together while others can work from anywhere. That hardly seems fair, does it?
Not for every team, and it'll take some time for people to get used to booking desks. But everyone's in the same position, and I think this is probably a good moment to bring it in.
Really? It's the summer, so lots of people are still on holiday. They should have waited until autumn. What do you think of this hot desking policy then?
I can see why they're doing it. Since people started working from home twice a week, half the desks are empty.
I see what you mean, but some teams need to sit together while others can work from anywhere. That hardly seems fair, does it?
Not for every team, and it'll take some time for people to get used to booking desks. But everyone's in the same position, and I think this is probably a good moment to bring it in.
Really? It's the summer, so lots of people are still on holiday. They should have waited until autumn.
The answer came right at the end. Well done if you said C, whether the policy was introduced at the right time. So the woman is saying it's a good time, or it's the right time to bring in the policy. And the man says, really, it's the summer. I think most people are on holiday. They should have done it in the autumn, so in the next few months. So that's what they disagree about. For a while, you might have been tempted by A, whether the policy was fair to all staff, because the man does reference this. He says, it hardly seems fair to all staff. But the woman doesn't disagree with him. The woman says, not for every team. So it's almost an agreement with the man. So it's not something they disagree about. It's more leaning towards agreeing. So, and B, they don't really mention whether the policy will be difficult to follow. There's nothing about the challenge or difficulty of it. So the correct answer to number 5 is C.
6. You hear a woman talking to her friend about his new car.
Teasing means making fun of.
So here it is, a new car for a new me.
So you went for racing red after all. I mean, it's a brave choice, but at least you're not going to lose it in a car park, are you?
I like it. It makes me look like a Formula One driver.
That might be pushing it. And are you really going to use all those buttons? I mean, you've got one there that heats the steering wheel.
I'll definitely be using that.
Fair enough. You've earned it, I suppose, and it does rather suit you.
So here it is, a new car for a new me.
So you went for racing red after all. I mean, it's a brave choice, but at least you're not going to lose it in a car park, are you?
I like it. It makes me look like a Formula One driver.
That might be pushing it. And are you really going to use all those buttons? I mean, you've got one there that heats the steering wheel.
I'll definitely be using that.
Fair enough. You've earned it, I suppose, and it does rather suit you.
Okay, the correct answer. Well done if you said A, teasing him about the colour. Now, it was, for me, in the first time I listened, it was between A and B. She doesn't admire some of its features. When she talks about the features, there's one she talks about, which is the heating steering wheel, and she sort of questions what the point of that is. And that's why also B was quite tempting, because she talks about the steering wheel and says, are you ever going to use that? But she's not questioning whether it's the right choice of car. She's questioning a specific feature. So that's why B is also incorrect. At the beginning, if you notice, she said, so you went for race car red after all. And then she says something about you're not going to lose that. And he says, oh, it makes me look like a Formula One driver. She says that might be pushing it a little bit. So she's sort of making fun of him about the overall color of the car. So A is the correct answer for number 6.
7. You hear a chef called Peter Wright on a radio program talking about his profession.
People often assume restaurant food has to be very elaborate, but I've never really believed that. Of course, I'm lucky because we've got some excellent farms nearby, and I use their vegetables and cheese whenever I can. And yes, the plate has to look inviting. People eat with their eyes first, as they say. But if there are too many flavors or too many little decorations, the dish stops making sense. For me, good cooking is about knowing when to leave something alone and let 2 or 3 strong ingredients do the work. People often assume restaurant food has to be very elaborate, but I've never really believed that. Of course, I'm lucky because we've got some excellent farms nearby, and I use their vegetables and cheese whenever I can. And yes, the plate has to look inviting. People eat with their eyes first, as they say. But if there are too many flavors or too many little decorations, the dish stops making sense. For me, good cooking is about knowing when to leave something alone and let 2 or 3 strong ingredients do the work.
For me, good cooking is about knowing when to leave a dish alone and letting 2 or 3 ingredients do the work. That, when he says, for me, that's the cue for what's important. He mentions all 3. So this is why you might think A, B, or C. But with A, using ingredients from local suppliers, he says, yes, I have good farms nearby and I use their ingredients. But it's not he doesn't say that that's an important aspect. Again, just something he does. Likewise, with making the plate look attractive, he says, people eat with their eyes, so they say. So, it's good, or he does make the plate look attractive. But again, it's not the important bit that he's saying. He cues that up with the phrase, for me. And then what comes after is that, I think, 2 or 3 ingredients rather than making it too complicated. So B is the correct answer for number 7. Okay, last question in listening part 1.
8. You hear an advertisement on the radio.
Getting fitter isn't always about pushing harder. It's about knowing what to do next. Maybe you've tried following workouts online or asked a trainer for advice, but after a few weeks, it's easy to lose track of your progress. With MoveWise, your weekly exercises, recovery days, and goals are all in one place. You can record each session, see how your strength is improving, and get reminders when it's time to train again. There's even a section for planning meals around your workouts, so your routine feels organized from morning to night. Getting fitter isn't always about pushing harder. It's about knowing what to do next. Maybe you've tried following workouts online or asked a trainer for advice, but after a few weeks, it's easy to lose track of your progress. With MoveWise, your weekly exercises, recovery days, and goals are all in one place. You can record each session, see how your strength is improving, and get reminders when it's time to train again. There's even a section for planning meals around your workouts, so your routine feels organized from morning to night.
Okay, a few clues here. So the correct answer is A. It's a fitness app. You can get reminders. There's even a section on healthy eating, I think she says, or around that. So that's why Sports Nutrition Plan might have been tempting, because she does mention nutrition or food and healthy eating, but it's part of this app. Similar with a personal training service, she sort of rules that out at the beginning. So the correct answer for number 8 is A. That's the end of listening part 1. As you notice, you do hear each track twice. So let's move on to listening part 2.
That is the end of part 1. Now go to part 2. Part 2. You will hear a woman called Megan Carter giving a talk to a local history group about her experience taking part in a theatre production at an old castle. For questions 9 to 18, complete the sentences with a word or short phrase. You now have 45 seconds to look at part 2.
So let's just quickly explain the structure of listening part 2. Now, in this part, you will hear a talk by one speaker, and it will last for about 3 to 4 minutes. You are given a series of questions. There are 10 in total, which take the form of sentences or statements. In each sentence, there is a gap. You must write one word or a short phrase to complete each gap. Now, very important, the word or short phrase must be exactly as you hear it. So you write the words that you hear exactly. You don't change them. You don't paraphrase at all. Just the words that you hear. You will hear the recording twice. So let's go ahead and start listening part 2. We now have 45 seconds to read through the questions. And remember that the order of the questions is the same order as the recording. So you'll hear the answer to 9, then 10, then 11. It won't mix it up, so you can run in order.
Hi everyone, thanks for inviting me. I'm here to talk about something I did last year, which was performing in a play at Harrowford Castle. When I saw the advert, I wasn't actually attracted by the play itself. I didn't know much about it. What really caught my attention was the location. The idea of performing inside a real castle sounded too unusual to miss. I imagined we'd begin rehearsing on a stage somewhere, or perhaps in one of the castle rooms, but that wasn't the case. The first rehearsal was held in a classroom at a nearby college because the castle was still open to visitors during the day. It felt slightly strange at first, but it helped us focus on the words before thinking about the setting. Once we moved into the castle, everything became more exciting, but also more challenging. I thought the echo would be the biggest problem, and some actors complained about the stone floors. The hardest thing to adjust to was the cold. We were practicing during the winter months, and the exposed nature of the castle made things difficult. I didn't have a huge part in the production. I'd hoped to play one of the travellers because they had some funny scenes, but the director decided I should be a servant. At first, I was a bit disappointed, but the role was actually more interesting than I expected because I was on stage quite often, silently watching what the king and queen were doing. The director was very particular about movement. She didn't want us standing around like modern people in costumes. She told us to study old portraits, but what she kept saying was that we should move more like dancers, not in an exaggerated way, but with more control and awareness of where everyone else was. The costumes looked fantastic, especially the coats and long dresses, but they weren't easy to wear. Some people struggled with the shoes, and the hats kept slipping during rehearsals. In my case, it was the collar that became really uncomfortable. It looked impressive, but after an hour under the lights, I couldn't wait to take it off. The audience seemed to enjoy the whole production, but there was one moment that always got the biggest reaction. Near the end, a door opened behind one of the characters. We knew it was coming, of course, but many people in the audience gasped. The sword fight was nicely done despite a few errors, which made the audience laugh. Because we spent so much time rehearsing and performing, I didn't actually see as much of the castle as I wanted to. I walked through the main hall every evening and saw the courtyard during breaks, but I never managed to visit the library, which was a shame because several people told me it was the most beautiful room in the building. After the final performance, we were all exhausted. Someone suggested going for a meal, and another person wanted to organise a party, but in the end we had a picnic in the castle grounds the next afternoon. It was simple, but it felt like the perfect way to say goodbye to the place. If you're planning to visit Harrowford Castle, I definitely recommend going. There are guided tours, and the website has basic opening times, though these can change when events are taking place. Before you travel, it's worth checking the event schedule so you don't arrive on a day when parts of the castle are closed. So that's my experience of acting in a castle. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Oh, okay. As you can see, it's quite difficult, right? There's a long text you have to listen to. So what I like to do is put some answers in, and if I'm not sure, the ones I'm sure of, okay, I leave, like, for example, location. But if there are some that I'm not sure of, I just put a small question mark on after, so that when I listen again for a second time, I know this is one I need to, really think about. Also, did you notice, and this is really common in listening part 2, there will be lots of what we call tempting answers. So lots of things you hear, you think, oh, it might be that one. So for example, I think there was one coming a bit later. I think it was this one, number 16, and also 17. But I think she talked about the library, there was the courtyard, and there was another place as well. And with the picnic as well, she sort of goes, some people wanted to go for a meal, or we thought about celebrating a meal, and some people wanted to do this. But in the end, we did that. And this is a really good skill for this part of, for listening part 2. Really listen carefully, because there will be some things you hear that might make you think, oh, that's the correct answer. But really read the sentence carefully and listen for things like, oh, actually it was, oh, but we didn't do that in the end, which rules that out. We actually did. And then you know the answer's coming. So we'll listen again, we'll check our answers, and we'll see and listen out for those particular ways that the speaker is sort of introducing answers, or answers that are incorrect but might be tempting.
Now you will hear part 2 again.
Hi everyone, thanks for inviting me. I'm here to talk about something I did last year, which was performing in a play at Harrowford Castle. When I saw the advert, I wasn't actually attracted by the play itself. I didn't know much about it. What really caught my attention was the location. The idea of performing inside a real castle sounded too unusual to miss. I imagined we'd begin rehearsing on a stage somewhere, or perhaps in one of the castle rooms, but that wasn't the case. The first rehearsal was held in a classroom at a nearby college because the castle was still open to visitors during the day. It felt slightly strange at first, but it helped us focus on the words before thinking about the setting. Once we moved into the castle, everything became more exciting, but also more challenging. I thought the echo would be the biggest problem, and some actors complained about the stone floors.
Notice a good example there. Sorry to interrupt it. I thought the echo would be the problem, and some actors complained about the stone walls. So you might be tempted to think it's either echo or stone walls, but listen to what she does next.
The hardest thing to adjust to was the cold.
The hardest thing to adjust to was the cold. So the cold is the correct answer. She says the hardest thing, and that's a synonym of the most difficult.
We were practicing during the winter months, and the exposed nature of the castle made things difficult. I didn't have a huge part in the production. I'd hoped to play one of the travellers because they had some funny scenes, but the director decided I should be a servant. At first, I was a bit disappointed, but the role was actually more interesting than I expected because I was on stage quite often, silently watching what the king and queen were doing. The director was very particular about movement. She didn't want us standing around like modern people in costumes. She told us to study old portraits, but what she kept saying was that we should move more like dancers, not in an exaggerated way, but with more control and awareness of where everyone else was. The costumes looked fantastic, especially the coats and long dresses, but they weren't easy to wear. Some people struggled with the shoes, and the hats kept slipping during rehearsals. In my case, it was the collar that became really uncomfortable. It looked impressive.
Gosh, there were lots to choose from there. Here's another really good example. What did we have? Hats. What else did we have? Hats kept slipping, the costume. There was something else as well, and some people, but notice how she keeps saying some people had problems with this, or I thought this was going to be a problem. When you hear those sorts of phrases, normally what comes next is not the correct answer. It's to try and tempt you into it. So really listen carefully to when she says, but actually it was, and in this case, the collar that she found most uncomfortable. So this part here.
But after an hour under the lights, I couldn't wait to take it off. The audience seemed to enjoy the whole production, but there was one moment that always got the biggest reaction. Near the end, a door opened behind one of the characters. We knew it was coming, of course, but many people in the audience gasped. The sword fight was nicely done despite a few errors, which made the audience laugh. Because we spent so...
sorry to interrupt again, but this one is a really good one because the answer comes before the sort of other potential answers. So the door is the correct answer. But she also talked about the sword fight, and she said it made people laugh. But the door scene or the door is what the audience reacted most strongly to. I think she said they gasped and exactly that. So door is the correct answer.
So much time rehearsing and performing, I didn't actually see as much of the castle as I wanted to. I walked through the main hall every evening and saw the courtyard during breaks, but I never managed to visit the library, which was a shame because several people told me it was the most beautiful room in the building. After the final performance, we were all exhausted. Someone suggested going for a meal, and another person wanted to organise a party, but in the end we had a picnic in the castle grounds the next afternoon. It was simple, but it felt like the perfect way to say goodbye to the place. If you're planning to visit Harrowford Castle, I definitely recommend going. There are guided tours, and the website has basic opening times, though these can change when events are taking place. Before you travel, it's worth checking the event schedule so you don't arrive on a day when parts of the castle are closed. So that's my experience of acting in a castle. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, so this one is correct now. So location is the answer to 9. There are 2 possibilities you could have as the correct answer here, because she says the first rehearsal took place in a classroom inside a college. So to say the first rehearsal took place in a classroom or it took place in a college, both are correct. We have cold, servant, dancers, collar, door, library, picnic. Notice, did you remember when she talked about the picnic, the things happening before, but in the end we had a picnic. And then the last one is event schedule. Now, both are possible, event or events, and schedule. So those are the correct answers. Let's move on to listening part 3.
That is the end of part 2. Now go to part 3. Part 3. You will hear 5 short extracts in which people are talking about their first part-time jobs as teenagers. For each question, choose from the list A to H what each speaker says about the experience. Use the letters only once. There are 3 extra letters which you do not need to use.
Okay, so let's go through the structure of listening part 3. Now, in this part of the listening paper, you will hear 5 short extracts, and those extracts will last about 30 seconds, and there will be 5 speakers in total. You're given a list of options to choose from A to H, and you need to decide which person is talking about which option. Now, there are 3 options that you will not need to use, so you'll only need to use 5 of them. Okay, and remember, no option is repeated. So for example, for speaker 1, let's say, for example, it might be A. If you think that, then speaker 2 will not be A, and speaker 3 will not be A. So using the letters only once. Okay, let's go ahead and start listening part 3.
You now have 30 seconds to look at part 3. Speaker 1.
I worked in a small cafe near the station on Saturday mornings. Talking to complete strangers felt terrifying at first. I used to rehearse simple things in my head, like asking whether someone wanted milk or sugar, which sounds ridiculous now, but after a few weeks I stopped worrying so much. Some customers were in a rush and 1 or 2 could be a bit sharp, but most were fine if you just smiled and got on with it. By the end, I could chat to regulars without feeling awkward. And that carried over into school as well.
Speaker 2.
My first job was in a supermarket, stacking shelves after school twice a week. I'd imagined it would be fairly easy, just putting tins and packets in the right place, but there was much more to it than that. Deliveries had to be unloaded quickly, boxes needed lifting, and the shelves had to be filled before the shop got busy. I remember coming home with aching arms and going straight to bed before dinner. The manager was friendly enough, and the other staff helped me find my way around, so it wasn't unpleasant.
Speaker 3.
I got a weekend job at a local movie theater, mostly checking tickets and helping clear up between films. The shifts changed from week to week, so I had to keep a proper note of when I was working, especially because I still had homework and soccer practice. I missed one shift early on because I'd written the time down on a scrap of paper and then lost it. Nobody shouted at me, but I was so embarrassed that I bought myself a planner the next day. After that, I started sorting out my schoolwork earlier in the week instead of leaving everything until Sunday evening. The job wasn't difficult, but it did make my life feel a lot busier.
Speaker 4.
I spent one summer working at a garden centre. I thought I might enjoy it because I liked being outdoors, and I was quite interested in plants at the time. A lot of the day involved carrying heavy bags of compost, watering displays and sweeping up soil, and there were always customers asking questions I couldn't answer. The permanent staff knew exactly where everything was and seemed to keep going for hours without complaining. Before that job, I'd probably walked into places like that and not really noticed the people working there. After a few weeks, I saw the place completely differently. It's hard work keeping everything looking calm and pleasant for customers.
Speaker 5.
I helped out in a hairdresser's on Saturdays, mainly washing towels, sweeping the floor and making tea for clients. I'd always thought working in a salon looked quite glamorous, with everyone chatting and music playing in the background. There was some of that, but most of my day was spent doing the jobs nobody else had time for. The stylists were kind to me, and I didn't mind being busy, but I realised quite quickly that the atmosphere I'd imagined was only a tiny part of it. I'd been considering hairdressing as something I might do after school, but watching how skilled and patient you had to be made me less sure it was the right path for me.
Now you will hear part 3 again.
Okay, so as we go through the second part, I will start to put in the correct answers and I'll explain at the end of each speaker why those are correct.
Speaker 1.
I worked in a small cafe near the station on Saturday mornings. Talking to complete strangers felt terrifying at first. I used to rehearse simple things in my head, like asking whether someone wanted milk or sugar, which sounds ridiculous now, but after a few weeks I stopped worrying so much. Some customers were in a rush and one or two could be a bit sharp, but most were fine if you just smiled and got on with it. By the end, I could chat to regulars without feeling awkward. And that carried over into school as well.
At the end, I could chat to regulars without feeling awkward. Now, she does say customers, so you might be thinking A, but she's not talking about how to deal with difficult customers. She said some just didn't want, just wanted to get their coffee and go. But actually, the correct answer is being more confident in social situations.
Speaker 2.
My first job was in a supermarket, stacking shelves after school twice a week. I'd imagined it would be fairly easy, just putting tins and packets in the right place, but there was much more to it than that. Deliveries had to be unloaded quickly, boxes needed lifting, and the shelves had to be filled before the shop got busy. I remember coming home with aching arms and going straight to bed before dinner. The manager was friendly enough, and the other staff helped me find my way around, so it wasn't unpleasant.
I remember coming home with aching arms and going to bed straight after dinner. So he talks about a lot of the physical sides of this case, working in a supermarket, stacking shelves, etc. And he didn't expect it to be like that physically tiring. And so therefore, B is the correct answer for speaker 2.
Speaker 3.
I got a weekend job at a local movie theater, mostly checking tickets and helping clear up between films. The shifts changed from week to week, so I had to keep a proper note of when I was working, especially because I still had homework and soccer practice. I missed one shift early on because I'd written the time down on a scrap of paper and then lost it. Nobody shouted at me, but I was so embarrassed that I bought myself a planner the next day. After that, I started sorting out my schoolwork earlier in the week instead of leaving everything until Sunday evening. The job wasn't difficult, but it did make my life feel a lot busier.
The correct answer is C. It helped me become better organized. So she talks about a time when she wrote something down on a scrap of paper and lost it. No one shouted at her, but she was embarrassed. So that sort of forced her or made her go out, I think she said, and buy a planner or a diary to basically schedule better, or so that didn't happen again. So the answer, it helped her become better organized.
Speaker 4.
I spent one summer working at a garden centre. I thought I might enjoy it because I liked being outdoors, and I was quite interested in plants at the time. A lot of the day involved carrying heavy bags of compost, watering displays, and sweeping up soil, and there were always customers asking questions I couldn't answer.
Just to interrupt there, notice how you might think B or possibly E. He said, I thought I might enjoy it. It's not saying it's less enjoyable than he imagined. He said, I did it because I thought I would enjoy it. So it's not E. And B, he says, he talked about carrying heavy bags of compost, I think it was. So he's talking about how it's physical, but he hasn't mentioned anything about it being more physical than he expected. So it's not B or E.
The permanent staff knew exactly where everything was and seemed to keep going for hours without complaining. Before that job, I'd probably walked into places like that and not really noticed the people working there. After a few weeks, I saw the place completely differently. It's hard work keeping everything looking calm and pleasant for customers.
After a few weeks, I saw the place completely differently. So, meaning he appreciated it. What did he appreciate? He says something on the lines of, I normally walked into a store and didn't realize the people working there and what the job that they were doing and basically how hard they were working. So the correct answer for speaker 4 is G.
Speaker 5.
I helped out in a hairdresser's on Saturdays, mainly washing towels, sweeping the floor and making tea for clients. I'd always thought working in a salon looked quite glamorous, with everyone chatting and music playing in the background. There was some of that, but most of my day was spent doing the jobs nobody else had time for. The stylists were kind to me, and I didn't mind being busy, but I realised quite quickly that the atmosphere I'd imagined was only a tiny part of it.
You might be tempted with E here because she does use the word imagined, and she sort of says, oh, I'm doing the jobs that no one else wanted to do. But she never says it was less enjoyable than they imagined. Keep listening and the answer will be...
I'd been considering hairdressing as something I might do after school, but watching how skilled and patient you had to be made me less sure it was the right path for me.
I've been considering doing hairdressing after I finished school, but I'm not sure. So the answer that we're coming to is H. It's making them think differently.
That is the end of part 3. Now go to part 4. Part 4. You will hear part of a radio interview with a man called David Patel, who designs educational mobile apps for teenagers. For each question, choose the correct answer, A, B, or C. You now have 1 minute to look at part 4.
Okay, so let's have a quick look at the structure of listening part 4. Now, in this part of the listening paper, we will hear an interview between an interviewer and another speaker. There are 7 questions for us to answer. Each question has 3 options, A, B, or C. Our job is to choose the correct option based on what we hear in the recording. So let's continue with listening part 4, where we have 1 minute to read the questions and options. And just to interrupt here to say that the order of the questions will follow the order in the recording. So the first thing that the speakers will talk about is this first question, in this case, question 24.
Today I'm joined by David Patel, who designs educational mobile apps used by teenagers around the world. David, thanks for coming in.
Thanks for inviting me.
App design sounds like a modern career. Was it something you always wanted to do?
Not really. I was good with computers and I really liked solving problems, but I didn't see it as a possible job until I was about 15. I had a maths tutor who let us try little coding tasks when we'd finished our normal work. One day she saw a basic revision guide I'd made and said, "You know, people do this for a living." It was then I started thinking about doing it as a career.
And now you design apps mainly for teenagers. What's the key to getting that right?
People often think that teenagers must be the most difficult audience to design for. I see their point because they're into lots of different things at that age, so building a one-size-fits-all app can be tricky. It's about giving them a wide range of things to do in the app itself so that they don't get bored after 5 minutes. Most teenagers are quite tech-savvy, so if they don't like it, they'll move on to another app quite quickly.
How do you find out whether those ideas are working?
We test them with real users early on. Feedback is a major part of app development, and there's no point feeling down or disheartened when a user doesn't like it. That's just part of the process. Usually, experienced designers already have a pretty good idea of what users want, and the feedback is just a validation of that, really. It's a bit of an art form because sometimes feedback becomes a wish list of features, which doesn't help you get the results you want.
Many parents and teachers worry about screen time. Does that affect your designs?
It has to. Some app companies deliberately focus on keeping users' attention, so it's no wonder we hear stories about people of all ages spending hours scrolling on their phones. We need to take on the responsibility ourselves by building in session limits, break reminders, and progress that isn't based on staying online for hours. It's no use just saying schools should deal with the problem by raising awareness.
App design sounds creative, but also technical. How important is teamwork?
Very. Designers, developers, writers, and testers all bring different skills, but for me, the real value of a team shows when a project gets difficult. You can spend days trying to fix one small problem, and it's easy to lose confidence. That's when someone saying, "Let's try this another way," or "come back to it later," can really help keep everyone going.
What about your first proper app project? Did that go smoothly?
No, it was a mess at first. It was meant to help students plan revision, but I tried to include everything: calendars, flashcards, quizzes, chat groups, even music playlists. I thought investors would like how ambitious it was, and I spent a long time making it look like the leading apps on the market. But when people tested it, they didn't know where to start. That was hard to accept. In the end, we cut about half the features, and the app became much better because it did fewer things clearly.
Finally, is there an idea you'd like to work on in the future?
Yes, I'm interested in tools for teachers. Lots of apps help learners practice independently in short bursts, and that's useful. But teachers still spend too much time adapting material for different students. I'd like to build something that helps them create different versions of the same activity quickly, depending on learners' level, confidence, or needs. It wouldn't replace the teacher. It would give them more time to actually teach.
David, thank you very much.
So we'll hear the recording again, and I'll put in the answers and explain why they're correct.
Now, you will hear part 4 again.
Today, I'm joined by David Rodriguez, who designs educational mobile apps used by teenagers around the world. David, thanks for coming in.
Thanks for inviting me.
App design sounds like a modern career. Was it something you always wanted to do?
Not really. I was good with computers and I really liked solving problems, but I didn't see it as a possible job until I was about 15. I had a maths tutor who let us try little coding tasks when we'd finished our normal work. One day she saw a basic revision guide I'd made and said, "You know, people do this for a living." It was then I started thinking about doing it as a career.
And now you design.
So he says his tutor said, "Do you know people do this for a living?" talking about something that he made. And that's when he said he first started thinking about it as a career. So the correct answer for 24 is B. He doesn't say he made a revision guide, but he doesn't say he made it because he wanted to make studying feel less stressful, or indeed that was the reason why he was interested in app design. Again, he talks about solving problems, but it's not the main reason he became interested. So 24 is B.
Design apps mainly for teenagers. What's the key to getting that right?
People often think that teenagers must be the most difficult audience to design for. I see their point because they're into lots of different things at that age, so building a one-size-fits-all app can be tricky. It's about giving them a wide range of things to do in the app itself so that they don't get bored after 5 minutes. Most teenagers are quite tech-savvy, so if they don't like it, they'll move on to another app quite quickly.
How do
It's about giving them a wide range. He doesn't say a wide range of features, but he said, I think it says a wide range of things to do so that they don't get bored and go somewhere else. So the correct answer is B, including enough features to keep users interested. He doesn't mention much about the visual style or making sure users can understand it without instructions. I think, in fact, he says that young people are pretty tech savvy, i.e. they understand technology really easily. So B is the correct answer to 25.
How do you find out whether those ideas are working?
We test them with real users early on. Feedback is a major part of app development, and there's no point feeling down or disheartened when a user doesn't like it.
Sorry to interrupt. He says there's no point feeling down or disheartened, so feeling upset when a user doesn't like it. So that rules out A. He doesn't say that it can be hard to accept.
Just part of the process. Usually, experienced designers already have a pretty good idea of what users want, and the feedback is just a validation of that, really.
Often designers have a pretty good idea of what users want, and the feedback is just a validation of that, really. So C is our correct answer. It often confirms what the design team already expected.
It's a bit of an art form because sometimes feedback becomes a wish list of features, which doesn't help you get the results you want.
It doesn't help you get the results you want when the feedback becomes a wish list of features. So basically there he's saying when feedback contains, oh, I want this, I want this, I want this, he says it's not practical or helpful. So that is in opposite to what it says in B, where it says it's most useful. He doesn't say that.
Many parents and teachers worry about screen time. Does that affect your designs?
It has to. Some app companies deliberately focus on keeping users' attention, so it's no wonder we hear stories about people of all ages spending hours scrolling on their phones. We need to take on the responsibility ourselves by building in session limits, break reminders, and progress that isn't based on staying online for hours.
A is the correct answer there, and that was the answer, just that bit there, where he says we need to take the responsibility ourselves, things like break reminders and other things, basically measuring or monitoring how long they spend online. Notice at the beginning when he says it's no wonder young people, saw that. He's not saying that they're unfairly criticized criticized. He's just talking about how young people are affected.
It's no use just saying schools should deal with the problem by raising awareness.
App design sounds creative.
And he says it's no use just saying schools should take the responsibility. So he's not saying that schools should take more responsibility. He's just saying it's pointless just giving it to schools. He's basically saying it needs to come from the app designers. So A is our correct answer. On to question 28.
Creative, but also technical. How important is teamwork?
Very. Designers, developers, writers, and testers all bring different skills, but for me, the real value of a team shows when a project gets difficult.
Notice where he cues up the correct answer. He says, yeah, they all bring different skills, but for me, and then what he says here.
You can spend days trying to fix one small problem, and it's easy to lose confidence. That's when someone saying, let's try this another way or come back to it later, can really help keep everyone going.
Someone says, let's try this a different way or come back to it later, can really help keep people going or can really help encourage during difficult projects.
What about your first proper app project? Did that go smoothly?
No, it was a mess at first. It was meant to help students plan revision, but I tried to include everything. Calendars, flashcards, quizzes, chat groups, even music playlists. I thought investors would like how ambitious it was, and I spent a long time making it look like the leading apps on the market. But when people tested it, they didn't know where to start. That was hard to accept.
So when people tested it, they didn't know where to start. Now, the correct answer is B. And the reason it's not A, he talks about investors, but he doesn't say it's the biggest challenge. He said when he was explaining it to investors. And similarly as well, he said he spent time making the app look like others on the market. So whilst he does those two things, it's not the biggest challenge. The biggest challenge is B, realizing the app was too complicated.
In the end, we cut about half the features, and the app became much better because it did fewer things clearly.
Finally, is there an idea you'd like to work on in the future?
Yes, I'm interested in tools for teachers. Lots of apps help learners practice independently in short bursts, and that's useful. But teachers still spend too much time adapting material for different students.
Notice how he brings in B. He talks about it, but doesn't confirm that that's what his future app idea will do. So it's not B.
I'd like to build something that helps them create different versions of the same activity quickly.
I'd like to help them, teachers, build things that make the same activity or customize the same activity. It's words to that effect. Basically, help teachers personalize lessons. So A is going to be our correct answer. He does briefly talk about C. You'll hear it, but it's not, again, what he says his future app idea will be.
Depending on learners' level, confidence, or needs. It wouldn't replace the teacher. It would give them more time to actually teach.
David, thank you very much.
And that is the end of listening part 4 and the end of the listening paper. So as we'll hear now, we'll have 2 minutes to go through and check our answers.
That is the end of part 4. You now have 2 minutes to check your answers.
Okay, so the first thing I'd recommend in this is just to make sure you've answered every question. It sounds simple, but it can be quite easy to miss one or to not having answered one. So go through each part and just make sure that there is an answer in each part for each question. Next, really try to answer everyone. So if you don't know, particularly in the part 4, part 3 and part 1, where there are options, click one that you think is the best answer and just make sure you provide an answer. So as you work back through, just look for any gaps, make sure you've answered every one. For the part 2, of course, it's a bit harder because you're having to type in a word, but again, just make sure you've got at least something in the gap that you think it might be. Again, for part 3, just making sure every speaker has an option attached to them, and the same thing for part 4 as well. Well done for making it this far. We've now completed the listening paper and we'll move on to the speaking section. So the speaking paper of the B2 First exam consists of 4 parts and it will usually take around 14 minutes. Now remember that there's the examiner, yourself, and at least one other candidate. So there might be one other candidate or 2 other candidates with you in the speaking exam. Before I click confirm and start speaking, just to explain what will happen. So we will hear from the examiner who will introduce the speaking paper. And this is exactly what you'll hear in the live exam. So listen carefully to how they introduce, and then we'll work through each part and I'll give you some tips and strategies to deal with those. So let's make a start. Okay, so we begin with part 1, which is a short conversation between yourselves and the examiner. Now, the examiner is going to ask you some general questions about yourself. For example, what do you like to do at the weekend? Do you have any hobbies? What job would you like to have in the future? My advice for this section is try not to memorize answers beforehand. The reason being is that you might not get asked the question that you've memorized the answer for, and that can make you feel quite stressed. So remember, it's a natural conversation about you, and no one knows you better than yourself. So use that great English that you have, and you'll be absolutely fine.
Hello, my name is Sarah Johnson, and this is my colleague Daniel Jones.
So you can see the examiner introduces themselves, and also there will be another examiner in the room as well. They'll normally be in the corner of the room, and their job is to mark your responses so that other examiner won't ask you any questions. It will just be the examiner who's sitting in front of you that will ask you the questions.
Can I have your mark sheets, please?
This is where you'll give them your mark sheets.
Thank you. First, we'd like to know something about you. What do you like to do at the weekend?
So I like to go on long walks in the countryside with my wife and my 2 golden retrievers.
Alex, how do you usually keep in touch with your friends?
I usually keep in touch with my friends by sending messages on WhatsApp. It's quick and easy, especially when we're busy.
Is there a sport or hobby you enjoy doing?
Yes, there is. I really enjoy playing tennis, especially in the summer months when the weather is warmer.
Where did you go on your last holiday?
My last holiday was in Antalya. It's a beautiful city in Turkey, right next to the Mediterranean, with lots of lovely food.
Alex, what kind of films do you enjoy watching?
I enjoy watching comedies and adventure films because they help me relax. I also like films with an interesting story.
Great, that is the end of part 1. Now you'll notice that the answers are really quite short there. You don't need to talk for a long time for each question. Just answer the question in a natural way and you'll be absolutely fine. So let's take a look now at part 2. So in speaking part 2, you'll be given 2 photographs to compare and a question to answer. Your partner will also be given 2 photographs to compare and a question to answer. You'll be asked to speak for 1 minute. You will also be asked a question about your partner's photographs, so it's really important that you listen to what your partner is saying. Okay, so when I click begin part 2, we will see the question and the 2 photographs, and you'll see how part 2 works. So let's go ahead.
Thank you. In this part of the test, I'm going to give you 2 photographs. I'd like you to talk about your photographs on your own for about a minute, and also to answer a question about your partner's photographs. It's your turn first. Here are your photographs. They show people taking photographs in different situations. I'd like you to compare the photographs and say why these people have decided to take photographs in these situations. All right?
Okay, so I'm up first. Wish me luck. Okay, so both photographs show people taking photos, but in very different situations. So the photograph on the left shows a group of people, most likely friends, taking a selfie out in the park. Whereas the photo on the right shows a newly married couple having their wedding photos taken. I think both people or both sets of people have taken photographs because they want to remember the day, but maybe those memories are very different. So the group of friends in the first photo may be a university friends or have met on a language course and they want to remember that moment. Whereas the newly married couple, this is a very special and memorable day for them, one that they'll probably remember for the rest of their lives. So they want to capture that moment.
Thank you. Alex, do you enjoy taking photographs?
Yes, I do, although I'm not especially serious about photography. I usually take photos when I'm traveling, visiting an interesting place, or spending time with friends and family. For me, it's a good way to remember enjoyable moments. I mostly use my phone because it's convenient, and even if the photos aren't perfect, I like looking back at them later.
Thank you.
Okay, just to interrupt before Alex starts comparing his photographs. So, how can you approach speaking part 2? You see that you don't have so much time to prepare what you're going to say. But remember that the photographs will give you a lot of opportunity to speak. So what I would do, what I did in that one, was I always start by using the phrase both photographs show, because very often, and in fact pretty much always, the photographs will be linked in some way. You can see in Alex's photographs here that shows two people eating, or rather people eating in different situations. So you can say both photos show, and that's a nice way to start off with a comparison. You can then move in to describe in a bit more detail what you see in both photographs, and then bring it back to the question that you're being asked to answer. So in my case, it was, why have these people decided to take photographs? So there was a slight difference between the situations, so you can talk about that as well. Let's listen to see how Alex answers this question and compares these two photographs. And remember, I will also be asked a question at the end of this as well.
Now, Alex, here are your photographs. They show people eating in different places. I'd like you to compare the photographs and say what you think the people are enjoying about eating in these places. All right?
In both photographs, the people are eating together, but the places are quite different. In the first photo, the two women are sitting in a restaurant or cafe. They might be enjoying the comfortable atmosphere and the chance to have a proper meal without needing to cook. It also looks quite stylish, so perhaps they're enjoying a special lunch or a relaxed meeting. In the second photo, the two women are having a picnic outside in the countryside. I think they're enjoying being close to nature and spending time in the fresh air. The place looks peaceful, so it's probably a nice escape from their normal routine. The people in both groups seem to be enjoying the social side of eating, but the first place is more convenient and comfortable, while the second is more natural and relaxing.
Thank you.
Good answer, because I just want to interrupt before the examiner asks me a follow-up question. Did you notice what Alex did? He started very similar to me. He started off with a both photos show style start. But then while he was comparing the first question, the first photo, he was answering the question as he was describing it. And then he moved to the second, described it and answered the question, and then sort of summarized it at the end. So that was a really good model to follow. So you could rewind if you want to listen back to either my answer or Alex's answer, then please do, because they're both good models on how to approach speaking part 2. Okay, here's my question.
Which of these places would you prefer to eat in and why?
Okay, so I think I would prefer to eat outdoors where the two people seem to be having a picnic. I prefer to eat in nature when I have a picnic, and this looks like a really nice spot. I don't mind eating in restaurants. It's fine and certainly for special occasions. But if I had to choose between the two, I would choose the outdoor picnic scene. And that's the end of speaking part 2. Gosh, you can see how difficult it can be, right, when you're comparing the two photographs. But use those techniques, listen back again, and you'll be absolutely fine. So let's now move on to speaking part 3. So speaking part 3 is the collaborative task. So this is where you will be asked to have a conversation with the other candidate. The examiner will give you a question and 5 prompts that are connected to that question. You must speak with your partner for up to 2 minutes to answer the question using those 5 prompts. Once you're done, the examiner will then ask you both a follow-up question to discuss. This will last for about 1 minute, and the purpose of this bit is to try and reach a decision. Don't worry, you don't need to reach a decision, but that's the purpose of that particular speaking part. So let's dive straight in. When I click begin part 3, you will hear a sort of realistic conversation that I'll have with my speaking partner so you can see how this works.
Now, I'd like you to talk about something together for about 2 minutes. Some people say that it is a good idea for teenagers to have a part-time job, while others disagree. Here are some things they think about, and a question for you to discuss. First, you have some time to look at the task.
Okay, so you will be given about 15 seconds to look at the question and the 5 prompts.
Now, talk to each other about whether it is a good idea for teenagers to have a part-time job.
Okay, so I'm now going to have a conversation with my speaking partner. Okay, would you like to start?
Sure, thanks. I think this topic is really relevant for us. To begin, earning their own money is probably a big plus, giving them some independence. On the other hand, there's the risk of having less time to study. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think overall it is a good idea for teenagers to have a part-time job. And like you say, the reason for that is earning their own money. It's independence. It's also learning a bit more about the responsibility of money. I guess one problem is having less time to study, but if it's a part-time job, then I think you could probably easily work around your studies or work the job around your studies. What do you think?
That's a good point. Learning responsibility is definitely another key benefit, managing your time and tasks. But about the study, sometimes it can be harder than you expect, especially with exams. Then there's the feeling of being tired, which might affect your focus in class. Have you thought about that side of it?
Yeah, I know what you mean. Certainly, if you're feeling tired, and you certainly don't want to feel tired, particularly during exam season. But I wonder whether you could maybe have a part-time job at the times of the year when it's quieter for you with your schoolwork or university work, so that you don't necessarily feel tired for those important moments of study. What do you think about meeting new people?
That's a clever idea, trying to balance the workload. Meeting new people is actually a really positive aspect, I think. You learn to communicate with different types, which is useful later in life. Plus, making friends outside of school can be really fun. We haven't decided which is the best reason, though. What's your top pick?
So I agree with you completely about meeting new people. That's a really important skill to develop.
Thank you.
Now, notice as we reached 2 minutes, the examiner interrupted us. That's absolutely fine. It's no problem if the examiner interrupts you. It's not a bad thing. It's just because they've realized that 2 minutes have passed. So we're now going to move on to the bit where Alex and I, or my speaking partner and I, are going to try and make a decision based on a question that the examiner is going to give us.
Now you have about a minute to decide what you think is the best reason for teenagers to have a part-time job.
Okay, so the question we're answering here is, what do you think is the best reason for teenagers to have a part-time job? And we can use these prompts to help us. Okay, so for me, I think the best reason for teenagers to have a part-time job is earning their own money. I think when you earn money at a young age, it allows you to do more things, obviously, but also it teaches you responsibility and you learn to manage money from a young age. And I think that's going to be really useful later on in life. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with you. Earning your own cash is a great motivator. It really shows you the value of work and helps you become more independent. And like you said, learning to manage money is a great life skill. What about meeting new people, though? Do you think that's a big benefit as well?
Yeah, I think it is a good benefit. It's a good skill to have for later on in life. But personally, I would go for earning their own money. Would you agree with that?
I see your point.
Okay, we couldn't quite reach a decision. My speaking partner was thinking about it. But again, the time cut off and it's not the end of the world, or we don't have to reach a decision. That's not going to lose us any marks. The real thing is us having that interaction. So when you're having your conversation with your partners, really listen carefully to what they're saying, respond, either agree or disagree. That's going to be a really good thing to show the examiners that you're listening carefully, you're able to understand, and that you can respond accordingly. So again, if you want to watch that model back, you can, but we're going to move on to part 4, which is the final part of the speaking paper. So speaking part 4 is a conversation between yourself, the other candidate, and the examiner. The examiner is going to ask you questions that are related to the topic that you and your partner spoke about in speaking part 3. So for example, my partner and I spoke about teenagers having a part-time job. So most likely we're going to see questions about work and jobs and young people. Now, you want to keep your responses a bit longer than you did in part 1. Make sure you listen carefully to the questions and answer the questions thoroughly. Again, don't worry if the examiner interrupts you. It's absolutely fine. Just use your natural, great English. We're going to see an example of this now. So we'll have the conversation with the examiner, myself, and Alex, so that you can see how it works.
Thank you. Alex, some people say that teenagers should focus on their studies instead of working. Do you agree?
I partly agree because studies should usually be the main priority for teenagers. However, I think a small part-time job can also be useful because it teaches responsibility and helps young people understand the value of money.
Do you think having a part-time job is beneficial for young people?
Yes, I do overall, because I think it helps to teach them responsibility. It also helps them to manage money at an early age, which is an important life skill that they can use later on in life. And so overall, yes, I'd say it's very beneficial.
Alex.
And sorry to interrupt with Alex's next question, but remember, the things that you spoke about in part 3 are going to sort of come back in part 4 because the questions are going to be linked in terms of the topic. So if you saw there, using the prompts that we had in part 3, I was able to think of a few other ideas. So remember that in part 4, think back to part 3 and those prompts, and that will help you. You don't want to necessarily repeat everything you said in part 3, but at least for the coming up with ideas, it's going to help you.
Is it a good idea for students to work during the school holidays?
Yes, I think it can be a good idea, as long as students still have time to rest. A holiday job can help them earn some money and become more independent. However, they shouldn't work too much because school holidays are also important for relaxing and spending time with friends and family.
Should schools teach students more about money and the world of work?
Yes, absolutely. I think schools should. I think this is a skill that perhaps isn't taught as much as it should be in schools, given how important it is for students later on in life. It's going to help them, when they're renting, when they're getting loans, etc.
Alex, what do you think?
Yes, I think schools should teach students more about money and the world of work. These are practical skills that everyone needs in real life. For example, students should learn how to manage a budget, understand taxes, and prepare for job interviews. This will definitely help them in later life.
Now, notice what the examiner did. So this is why it's really important to listen to your partner and also listen to the questions that the examiner is asking your partner as well. Because here you notice that the examiner said, "And Alex, what do you think?" So they were asking Alex for their opinion as well. They didn't repeat the question or ask another question. So make sure you're always listening to the questions being asked, both to yourself, but also to your partner as well.
Alex, do you think it is more important to enjoy your job or to earn a good salary?
I think enjoying your job is more important, although salary matters too. If you dislike your job, it can affect your mood and your health. However, people still need enough money to live comfortably, so the best situation is to have a job you enjoy with a salary that allows you to feel secure and enjoy your life outside work.
What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with Alex there. I think it's more important to enjoy your job. I think if you think that you're spending maybe 8 to 9 hours a day in your job and doing the work you do, it's vital that you find it enjoyable. I think otherwise it's going to really stress you out.
What kinds of skills do you think young people will need in the future?
That's a good question. I think I would have said coding skills and computer skills, but I think since the sort of creation of the introduction of artificial intelligence, maybe those skills won't be needed. So more soft skills like being able to communicate with people and work together with people.
I think young people will need problem-solving skills because the world is changing very fast. They will also need to be creative and confident when using technology. In my opinion, teamwork will be important too because many jobs involve sharing ideas and working with different people.
Thank you very much. That is the end of the speaking test.
And that is the end of the speaking paper and the end of this B2 First practice test. Very well done for making it this far. I hope you've enjoyed the video and that you've learned some nice tips and strategies that you can use in your B2 First exam. It leaves me to say the very best of luck. You will be absolutely brilliant. If you would like to do some more practice for the B2 First exam, you can head over to English Exam World, where you'll find lots more practice tests and preparation material. But thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.